Lucas Hale's hands gripped the steering wheel as red and blue lights flooded his rearview mirror, his son's labored breathing filling the car. He wasn't speeding, not much, but Noah's appointment couldn't wait. The female officer who approached his window had sharp eyes and a skeptical expression, ready to write another ticket to another careless driver. Then she saw the wedding ring. Then she saw the truth behind it. What should have been a forgettable afternoon traffic stop became the beginning of something neither of them saw coming. A collision of two broken lives, a grieving widower raising his son alone, and a woman secretly drowning under burdens no one could see. Some love stories start with a meet-cute. This one started with a violation and a lie told by a piece of jewelry that no longer meant what it seemed. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop a comment with your city name below. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The rain came down in sheets, turning the afternoon commute into a crawling parade of brake lights and frustration. Lucas Hale checked his watch for the third time in as many minutes, his jaw tight as he navigated through traffic with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to do everything alone. In the back seat, 8-year-old Noah pressed his face against the window, his breath fogging the glass in small, rhythmic clouds. "How much longer, Dad?" Noah's voice was quiet, almost apologetic, as if he knew the question would add to the tension already thick in the car. 15 minutes, buddy. Maybe 20 with this traffic." Lucas glanced in the rearview mirror, catching his son's pale reflection. The circles under Noah's eyes had darkened over the past week, and the cough that had started as a minor annoyance now rattled in his small chest with a persistence that had finally driven Lucas to make the appointment. "How are you feeling?" "Okay?" It was Noah's default answer to everything, a shield he'd learned to carry far too young. "My chest feels tight, though." Lucas's hands tightened on the wheel. The appointment was at 3:30, and it was already 3:15. Dr. Morrison's office had a strict policy about late arrivals. 15 minutes past your slot, and they'd reschedule. He couldn't let that happen. Not when Noah had been struggling to breathe properly for days. Not when every parent's worst fear whispered at the edges of his mind. The light ahead turned yellow. Lucas made a calculation, pressed the accelerator, and slipped through as it shifted to red. Not his finest moment, but desperate times and all that. Except the police cruiser 2 cars back had seen it too. "Dad?" Noah's voice carried a note of worry as the red and blue lights painted the interior of their sedan in alternating colors. "Are we in trouble?" Lucas pulled to the shoulder, his heart sinking. "No, buddy, I made a mistake. It's going to be okay." He was already doing the math in his head. How long would this take? Could he explain about the appointment? Would it matter? He rolled down the window as the officer approached, rain immediately speckling his sleeve. Through the side mirror, he watched her walk up, deliberate steps, one hand near her belt in that casual but ready posture they all seemed to have. When she reached his window, he found himself looking up at a woman in her early 30s with dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, sharp green eyes that missed nothing, and an expression of professional skepticism. "License and registration, please." Her voice was crisp, businesslike. No warmth, but no unnecessary hardness either. "Of course." Lucas reached for his wallet, hands steady despite the anxiety churning in his gut. "Officer, I know I shouldn't have run that light, but—" "License and registration first, sir. Then we can talk." She took the documents he offered, her eyes scanning them quickly before settling on his face. "Mr. Hale, do you know why I pulled you over?" "The light. I know. I'm sorry. My son has a doctor's appointment and we're already running late, and I wasn't thinking clearly." The words tumbled out faster than he intended, desperation bleeding through his attempt at composure. For the first time, Officer Claire Morgan's eyes shifted to the back seat. Noah stared back at her with those 2 old eyes, his small hand pressed against his chest in an unconscious gesture. She could hear the wheeze in his breathing, even from where she stood. "How late are you?" she asked, her tone shifting almost imperceptibly. "We have 15 minutes to get there, and it's a 10-minute drive. But if we're more than 15 minutes past the appointment time, they'll reschedule, and the next available slot isn't for 2 weeks." Lucas heard the pleading in his own voice and hated it, but pride seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. "Please, I know I screwed up, but he needs to see the doctor today. Claire studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Her eyes dropped to his left hand to the gold band that caught the gray afternoon light. Married, kid in the back seat, probably a wife at home who'd be furious if he got a ticket that spiked their insurance rates. "What's your name, kiddo?" she asked, leaning down slightly to make eye contact with Noah. Noah. His voice was barely above a whisper, but polite. Always polite. Noah Hale. "Hi, Noah. I'm Officer Morgan. That cough sounds pretty rough. You doing okay back there?" Noah nodded, but another cough seized him immediately after, undermining his silent assurance. Claire's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Stay here," she told Lucas, then walked back to her cruiser through the rain. Lucas watched in the mirror as she sat in her patrol car, his documents in hand. The seconds stretched into minutes. He checked his watch again. 3:20. Even if she let him go right now, they'd be cutting it close. "Is she going to arrest you?" Noah asked quietly. "Nobody. Officers don't arrest people for running red lights. Worst case, she gives me a ticket, and we still make your appointment. It's going to be fine." Lucas tried to sound more confident than he felt. He twisted the wedding ring on his finger, a habit born of 3 years of grief he couldn't seem to shake. The metal had worn thin in places from the constant motion. When Claire finally returned, she had his documents in one hand and a notepad in the other, but instead of the expected ticket, she handed everything back to him. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, her tone firm but not unkind. "I'm going to follow you to the doctor's office to make sure you get there safely, which means obeying all traffic laws, Mr. Hale. No more running lights, no matter how late you think you are. When we get there, I'm going to have a word with the front desk about your situation. Then, and only then, will I decide whether you're getting a ticket for that stunt. Understood?" Lucas blinked, momentarily speechless. You're going to help us? I'm going to make sure that kid gets medical attention and that you don't cause an accident trying to beat a clock. That's not help, Mr. Hale. That's me doing my job. Now let's move before we waste any more time talking about it. She tapped the roof of his car twice. "Drive safe. I'll be right behind you." The drive to Dr. Morrison's office took 12 minutes with Claire's patrol car trailing them like a guardian angel. Lucas obeyed every traffic law with religious precision, hyper-aware of the cruiser in his mirror and the ticking clock on his dashboard. Noah had gone quiet in the back seat, his breathing audible even over the sound of rain and traffic. When they pulled into the medical building's parking lot at 3:32, Lucas expected Claire to simply drive off, satisfied that she'd delivered them safely. Instead, she parked beside them and got out, waiting as Lucas helped Noah from the car. "You didn't have to," Lucas began. "Inside, now. We're already 2 minutes past." Claire held the door open, ushering them through with an impatient wave. The waiting room was the usual purgatory of uncomfortable chairs and outdated magazines. Behind the reception desk, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses on a chain looked up with an expression that suggested she'd perfected the art of turning away late arrivals. "I'm sorry, but if you're here for the 3:30 appointment, you'll need to reschedule. Our policy clearly states—" "Ma'am." Claire stepped forward, her badge visible on her belt. She didn't raise her voice, didn't adopt that aggressive cop tone that some officers love to use. She simply spoke with quiet authority. "This child has been experiencing respiratory distress for several days. His father encountered traffic difficulties that delayed their arrival by 2 minutes. I personally escorted them here to ensure they arrived safely. I'm asking you, as a courtesy, to please let the doctor know they're here." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly. She glanced at Noah, who chose that moment to unleash another coughing fit that sounded like gravel in a blender, then back at Claire. I'll let Dr. Morrison know they've arrived." She picked up the phone, her previous officious tone replaced by something more human. "Please have a seat." Claire nodded, then turned to Lucas. "I'm going to wait until the doctor sees him, then we'll talk about that ticket." "You really don't have to, Mr. Hale." She cut him off, but there was something almost gentle in her interruption. "Sit down, fill out whatever paperwork they need, take care of your kid. I've got time." Lucas wanted to argue, to thank her, to do something other than stand there feeling overwhelmed by a stranger's unexpected kindness. Instead, he just nodded and guided Noah to a chair while the receptionist slid a clipboard across the desk. The forms were familiar by now: medical history, current symptoms, insurance information, emergency contacts. Lucas filled them out on autopilot, his handwriting steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through his system. In the blank for mother's information, he wrote "Deceased 2021" in small, careful letters that had become routine over the past 3 years. Across the waiting room, Claire sat with her radio turned low, occasionally speaking into it in codes Lucas didn't understand. She'd removed her rain-spotted jacket, revealing the standard-issue uniform beneath. Without the intimidating presence of the patrol car and the authority of the traffic stop, she looked different, younger, tired in a way that suggested her job took more than it gave. "Officer Morgan?" Noah's small voice broke the waiting room's muzak and coughing soundtrack. Claire looked up. "Yeah, kiddo?" "Thank you for helping us." Something softened in her expression, a crack in the professional facade. "You're welcome, Noah. How's that chest feeling?" "Still tight, but Dad says the doctor will make it better." Noah leaned against Lucas's side, his small body warm with the fever Lucas had been monitoring all morning. "I bet he will." Claire's eyes met Lucas's over Noah's head, and for a moment something passed between them. A recognition of shared worry, perhaps, or mutual understanding of the weight of caring for someone vulnerable. "Noah Hale." A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. Lucas stood, helping Noah to his feet. He glanced back at Claire, who made a small gesture. "Go ahead." They could talk after. The examination room was sterile and cold. Dr. Morrison, a grandfatherly man with silver hair and gentle hands, listened to Noah's breathing with a stethoscope, his expression growing more concerned as he moved the instrument across Noah's small back. "How long has he been like this?" Dr. Morrison asked, making notes on his tablet. "The cough started about a week ago. Mild at first, but it's gotten progressively worse. The wheezing started 3 days ago, and this morning he woke up with a fever, just under 102. Lucas recited the information like he was reading from a checklist, the clinical detachment a shield against the fear underneath. "And you're still doing the breathing treatments from last winter?" "Every night before bed, just like you prescribed. They seemed to help at first, but the last few days they haven't made much difference." Dr. Morrison nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I'm hearing significant wheezing in both lungs, particularly the lower lobes. Combined with the fever and the progression you've described, I'm concerned this might be bronchitis, possibly pneumonia. I'm going to order a chest x-ray and some blood work to confirm. In the meantime, I'm prescribing a stronger inhaler and an antibiotic. If the x-ray shows what I think it does, we might need to consider a few days of more aggressive treatment." Lucas felt his stomach drop. Aggressive treatment meaning what? Hospital? "Let's wait for the results before we jump to worst-case scenarios. But I want you to take this seriously, Lucas. Noah's airways are already compromised from his asthma. An infection on top of that can escalate quickly in kids his age." Dr. Morrison placed a reassuring hand on Lucas's shoulder. "We caught it. That's the important thing. You got him here in time." The words should have been comforting. Instead, Lucas could only think about how close he'd come to not making it at all. If Claire Morgan had been a different kind of cop, if she'd taken her time writing that ticket, if she hadn't followed them here and intimidated the receptionist into bending the rules. "Can I go back to school tomorrow?" Noah asked, his voice small and hopeful. "Not tomorrow, kiddo. You're going to need to rest for a few days until these medicines start working, but you'll be back with your friends before you know it." Dr. Morrison smiled at him, then turned back to Lucas. "The nurse will take him down for the x-ray. I'll have the results within the hour. Wait here, and we'll go over everything when they come back." By the time Noah's x-ray was complete, and they'd returned to the waiting room with prescriptions for antibiotics and a stronger inhaler in hand along with instructions to return if his breathing worsened, nearly an hour had passed. Lucas half expected Claire to have left, her good deed done, and her shift calling her elsewhere. She was still there. She'd moved to a seat near the window, her phone in her hands, but she looked up when they emerged. Her eyes went to Noah first, then to Lucas, the question clear in her expression. "Bronchitis," Lucas said quietly, as Noah headed for the water fountain, still within earshot but not quite part of the conversation. "Possibly developing into pneumonia. We caught it early enough that he can recover at home, but it was close. If we'd waited those 2 weeks for the next appointment. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Claire stood, pocketing her phone. But you didn't wait. He's going to be okay. Because of you. Lucas met her eyes directly, allowing her to see the genuine gratitude there. I don't know what would have happened if you'd just written me that ticket and let me leave. You would have driven recklessly trying to make up time, possibly caused an accident, and maybe made it here late enough that they sent you home anyway. Claire's tone was matter-of-fact, but not unkind. I've seen it happen. People panic, make bad decisions, and sometimes those decisions have consequences that can't be undone. There was something in the way she said it, a weight that suggested she was speaking from experience rather than training manual wisdom. Lucas found himself studying her more carefully. The tiny scar above her left eyebrow, the tension in her shoulders that never quite released, the way her eyes seemed to catalog everything, even in casual conversation. So about that ticket, Lucas ventured. The corner of Claire's mouth twitched, almost a smile. Consider it a warning, but Mr. Hale, if I ever catch you running another red light, appointment or no appointment, I will write you up for everything I can think of. We clear? Crystal clear, and it's Lucas. I think you've earned the right to skip the formality. Claire. She offered her hand and Lucas shook it, surprised by the firmness of her grip. And for the record, I hope I never have to pull you over again. Once was stressful enough. Noah returned from the water fountain, his color slightly better now that he'd been given hope in the form of prescription medications. He looked between his father and Claire with that peculiar awareness children develop when they sense adults communicating on wavelengths they can't quite access. Are you going to give Dad a ticket now? He asked Claire directly. Not today. But your dad needs to promise me he's going to drive like his most precious cargo is in the car at all times. Think he can do that? Noah nodded seriously. He always drives careful. Today was just because I was sick. I know, kiddo. Claire's expression softened again, that same crack in her professional armor. You take care of yourself, okay? Listen to the doctor, take your medicine, and get lots of rest. Deal? Deal. Noah offered his hand for a shake, mimicking the adult gesture he'd just witnessed. Claire took it solemnly, giving it the same firm shake she'd given his father. They walked out together into the parking lot, where the rain had finally stopped, leaving everything glistening and clean-smelling. Lucas's car looked smaller somehow, next to Claire's patrol cruiser, less capable of protecting the precious cargo it carried. Thank you, Lucas said again, because the words needed to be repeated, even if they felt inadequate. Really, I don't know how to properly express what you did for us today. Claire was quiet for a moment, her hand resting on her cruiser's door handle. When she spoke, her voice carried a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. I became a cop because I wanted to help people. Some days that means catching actual criminals, but most days it's moments like this, being in the right place to make a small difference in someone's day. So thank you for letting me do my job the way it's supposed to be done. She opened her door, then paused. You know, if you weren't married, I'd consider adding my phone number to that warning, but your wife's a lucky woman, and I don't cross those lines. Lucas felt his throat tighten. His hand moved automatically to the wedding ring, spinning it once around his finger. The truth sat on his tongue, heavy and complicated. He could correct her, explain that the ring was a memorial rather than a promise, that there was no wife waiting at home. But something stopped him. Maybe the weariness of having to tell that story again, maybe the strange intimacy of the moment, or maybe just the knowledge that this was goodbye to someone who'd been unexpectedly kind. Drive safe, Claire. It was all he trusted himself to say. You too, Lucas, and Noah. Feel better, kiddo. She pulled away first, her cruiser merging into traffic with the easy confidence of someone who commanded the road. Lucas watched her go, then looked down at Noah, who was studying him with those two perceptive eyes. She was nice, Noah observed. Yeah, she really was. Why didn't you tell her mom died? The question, asked with such simple innocence, hit harder than it should have. Lucas crouched down to Noah's level, his hand automatically going to smooth his son's hair back from his flushed forehead. Because sometimes it's easier to let people think what they want to think. And because we were there for you, not to talk about complicated things with strangers. He stood, guiding Noah toward their car. Come on, buddy. Let's get you home and start those medicines. You heard the doctor. Rest and fluids and no school for a few days. Can I play video games if I'm resting? Nice try. Rest means actual rest, but I'll read to you if you want. We're still in the middle of that dragon book. The one where the kid finds the egg? That's the one. They drove home in comfortable silence, Lucas's hands steady on the wheel, his speed exactly at the limit. In the rearview mirror, Noah dozed, his head pressed against the window, the medication they'd given him at the doctor's office already pulling him toward the sleep his body desperately needed. Lucas's mind drifted back to Claire Morgan, despite his attempts to focus on the road ahead. There had been something in her eyes, a loneliness maybe, or a weariness that matched his own. For just a moment, when their hands had touched in that handshake, he'd felt something shift inside him. Not attraction, exactly. Or not just attraction. Recognition, perhaps. The sense of seeing someone who understood what it meant to carry weight alone. He spun the wedding ring again, a gesture so automatic he barely noticed it anymore. Sarah had been gone for 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days. The grief had evolved from a constant ache to something more manageable. A companion rather than a burden, always present but no longer debilitating. He'd learned to live with her absence, to build a life for Noah that honored her memory while moving forward. But moments like this reminded him of what that forward motion had cost. The isolation. The careful distance he maintained from anything that might disrupt the fragile stability he'd constructed. The reflexive defense of letting people believe he was married because it was simpler than explaining he was widowed, simpler than watching their expression shift from friendliness to pity. His phone buzzed as he pulled into their driveway. A text from his mother. How did the appointment go? Bronchitis, possibly pneumonia. Meds prescribed, home rest ordered. He'll be fine. Thank goodness. Let me know if you need anything. I can come stay with him if you need to work. Thanks, Mom. I'll let you know. His mother meant well, but her help always came with gentle questions about when Lucas might consider dating again. Suggestions that Noah needed a mother figure, subtle hints that 3 years was long enough to grieve. As if grief operated on a schedule. As if loving someone new meant betraying someone dead. Lucas helped Noah into the house, got him settled on the couch with a blanket and water, and administered the first dose of the antibiotic. Within minutes, Noah was asleep again. His breathing still labored, but slightly easier than it had been. The house felt too quiet. It always did when Noah wasn't filling it with his presence, his questions, his observations, his quiet company. Lucas moved through the familiar motions of his evening routine, checking email, reviewing tomorrow's work schedule, preparing a simple dinner that Noah probably wouldn't eat, but that Lucas would make anyway. His hand went to his ring again. Spin, spin, spin. A nervous habit born of loss. What would have happened if he'd told Claire the truth? If he'd said, actually, I'm widowed. The ring is just something I can't bring myself to take off yet. Would she have actually given him her number? Would he have wanted her to? The questions felt dangerous, disloyal. Sarah had been dead for years, but Lucas's commitment to her memory remained absolute. He'd promised her forever, and death didn't seem like sufficient reason to break that promise. Except that wasn't quite right, was it? Sarah wouldn't have wanted this. Lucas frozen in place, using her memory as a shield against connection, teaching Noah through example that love ended with loss and safety lay in isolation. His phone buzzed again. Another text, but this time from an unknown number. This is Officer Morgan. I got your number from your registration info. Hope that's not too creepy. Just wanted to check that Noah made it home okay, and you got those prescriptions filled. Lucas stared at the message for a long moment, his heart doing something complicated in his chest. She'd reached out. Despite thinking he was married, despite every professional boundary that probably said she shouldn't contact a civilian she'd pulled over, he should ignore it, or send a brief, polite response that didn't encourage further contact. Instead, he found himself typing, "Not creepy at all. We're home, meds are started, and he's already asleep on the couch. Thank you again for everything today." The response came quickly. "Good to hear. Tell him I said he better follow doctor's orders, or I'll have to write him a ticket next time." Lucas smiled despite himself. "I'll let him know. Pretty sure the threat of a traffic citation will be more effective than my nagging. Hey, whatever works. Take care, Lucas." He should have left it there, should have put the phone down and returned to his evening routine. Instead, his fingers moved before his brain could stop them. Claire? I need to tell you something. I'm not actually married. I'm widowed. Have been for 3 years. I wear the ring because, honestly, I'm not entirely sure why anymore. Habit, maybe, or fear. But I didn't correct you earlier because it felt easier to let you think what you were thinking. That was cowardly, and I'm sorry. He hit send before he could reconsider, then immediately wanted to unsend it. What was he doing? Unloading his grief on a stranger? Correcting a misunderstanding that didn't need correcting? Opening a door he'd been careful to keep closed? The 3 dots indicating she was typing appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Lucas held his breath. I'm sorry for your loss, and for what it's worth, you don't owe me an explanation, but I appreciate you telling me. Takes courage to be honest about hard things. A pause, then another message. And just so we're clear, I'm definitely adding my number to that warning now. If you ever need anything, or if you just want to talk to someone who gets what it's like to carry weight alone. No pressure, just an option. Lucas read the messages 3 times, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. The smart thing would be to thank her politely and let the conversation end. The safe thing. The thing that wouldn't risk complicating the carefully ordered life he'd built. I'd like that. The talking part, I mean. Though I'm probably terrible at it. Out of practice. Most people are. We can be terrible at it together. That sounds perfect. On the couch, Noah stirred, coughing once before settling back into sleep. Lucas watched his son's small chest rise and fall, the sound of his breathing filling the quiet house. 3 years ago, he'd promised Sarah that he'd take care of their boy, that he'd be enough for both of them. And he had been, or at least he'd tried. He'd learned to braid hair and pack lunches and attend parent-teacher conferences alone. He'd become an expert in explaining loss to a child who was too young to process it fully, but too smart to accept easy answers. But maybe being enough didn't mean being everything. Maybe it didn't mean carrying every burden alone, maintaining every wall, protecting Noah from the possibility that their small family of 2 might someday expand. Lucas saved Claire's number in his contacts, then set his phone aside. Tomorrow he'd think about what this meant. Tomorrow he'd analyze and second-guess and probably talk himself out of whatever this was before it had a chance to become something. Tonight, he'd just let himself feel something other than grief for the first time in a long while. Something that felt almost like hope, tentative and fragile but real nonetheless. Outside, the rain had started again, gentle against the windows. Inside, Noah slept and Lucas kept watch the way he always did. The ring still on his finger but spinning just a little less. Some things, he was learning, couldn't be rushed. Healing took time. Trust took time. The space between knowing you should move forward and actually taking the step was vast and complicated and deeply personal. But maybe, just maybe, he'd taken the first step today without even realizing it. Not by running that red light or making it to the appointment. Not by explaining about the ring or accepting Claire's number. By choosing, in one small moment of courage, to tell the truth instead of hiding behind the easier lie. It was a beginning, nothing more, nothing less. And for the first time in 3 years, a beginning felt like enough. The morning after Noah's diagnosis arrived with the kind of clarity that only follows a storm. Lucas woke to sunlight streaming through gaps in the curtains and the sound of his son's breathing, still labored, but steadier than it had been. He'd spent half the night checking on Noah, touching his forehead for fever, listening to make sure each breath came and went without crisis. His phone sat on the nightstand where he'd left it, Claire's number still glowing in his recent messages. In the harsh light of morning, their late-night text exchange felt almost surreal. Had he really told a virtual stranger about Sarah? Had she really offered her number, her time, her understanding? Lucas reached for the phone, then pulled his hand back. Too soon. Too eager. Too much like he was looking for something he had no business looking for. Instead, he got up and went through the familiar choreography of single parenthood. Starting coffee, checking Noah's temperature, measuring out the morning dose of antibiotic, preparing breakfast that might or might not get eaten. The routine was comforting in its predictability, a series of small tasks that added up to keeping his world stable. Noah emerged from his bedroom around 8, wrapped in his favorite blanket like a small coughing burrito. His color was better, the medication already beginning to work its slow magic, but his eyes still carried that fevered brightness that made Lucas's chest tight with worry. How are you feeling, buddy? Lucas guided him to the couch, already reaching for the thermometer. Better, still tired. Noah submitted to the temperature check without complaint, a testament to how routine this had become over the years. Can I have pancakes? The request was so normal, so beautifully ordinary, that Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. Pancakes mean you're definitely feeling better. Blueberry or chocolate chip? Blueberry. With the faces. Lucas smiled. The faces were a tradition from before. Sarah's tradition, actually. She'd been the one to start making pancakes with blueberry eyes and a banana slice smile, turning breakfast into art. Lucas's versions never looked quite as good, but he tried, and Noah never complained about his father's inferior pancake artistry. While the batter sizzled on the griddle, Lucas's phone buzzed. His heart jumped before he could stop it, but the message was from his business partner, Marcus, not Claire. Heard Noah's sick, taking the morning meeting solo. Focus on the kid. We'll catch up later. Lucas typed back a quick thanks, grateful for partners who understood that some things took priority over deadlines and client presentations. Architecture was demanding, but at least it was flexible when it needed to be. Most of the time. The pancake face he constructed was lopsided, one blueberry eye significantly higher than the other, giving it a quizzical expression that made Noah giggle when Lucas presented it with a flourish. He looks confused, Noah observed, already reaching for the syrup. He's confused about why he's about to be eaten. Existential crisis in breakfast form. Noah giggled again, a sound that dissolved into coughing, but gentler than yesterday's lung-rattling episodes. Progress. Small, but real. They ate in comfortable silence, Noah managing about half his pancake before his energy flagged. Lucas didn't push. The fact that he'd eaten anything at all was victory enough. Dad? Noah's voice was thoughtful, the tone he used when working up to a question he wasn't sure he should ask. That police lady yesterday, Officer Morgan, was she nice to you because she felt bad for us? Lucas considered the question carefully, setting down his coffee. What makes you think that? Sometimes people are extra nice when they find out about Mom, like they're worried we're going to break or something. Noah picked at a blueberry on his plate, not meeting Lucas's eyes. I don't like that kind of nice. It feels fake. The observation was so perceptive, so much older than 8, that Lucas felt the familiar ache of watching his son grow up too fast. Noah had learned to read pity in people's expressions before he'd learned to read chapter books. Officer Morgan didn't know about Mom yesterday. She thought I was married, remember? So her niceness didn't have anything to do with feeling sorry for us. I think she was just a good person who saw someone needed help and decided to help. That's the real kind of nice. Oh, Noah absorbed this, his expression clearing slightly. I liked her. She didn't talk to me like I was a baby. Yeah, I noticed that too. Are you going to see her again? The question was casual, but Lucas knew his son well enough to hear the careful neutrality in it. Noah had learned to guard his hopes almost as carefully as Lucas had. I don't know, buddy. Maybe. She gave me her phone number, so we might talk sometimes. Would that be okay with you? Noah shrugged, a gesture that tried for indifference but didn't quite land. I guess, as long as she's not the fake nice kind of people. I don't think she is, but if she turns out to be, we'll know pretty quickly, right? You're good at spotting that stuff. I am pretty good at it. Noah's small smile was proud, and Lucas filed the moment away in the mental catalog of things he wanted to remember. Noah being a kid, taking pride in small observations, not weighed down by grief or worry for just a few seconds. The rest of the morning passed in the quiet rhythm of sick days, animated movies on the couch, periodic medicine administration, Lucas working on his laptop while Noah dozed beside him. By early afternoon, Noah's fever had broken completely, his breathing noticeably easier. The crisis had passed, leaving behind only the slow work of recovery. Lucas was responding to an email from a client when his phone buzzed with a new message. This time, it was Claire. Hope Noah's feeling better today. No pressure to respond, just wanted you to know I'm thinking of you guys. The message was simple, but it carried a warmth that made Lucas realize how long it had been since someone outside his immediate family had thought about him at all. Not about what he could do for them, not about deadlines or deliverables, but just him. The person behind the roles he played. glanced at Noah, now deeply asleep, his breathing finally peaceful. Then he typed, "Much better. Thank you. Medicine is working. I think we're past the worst of it." "That's great to hear. Must be a relief." "You have no idea. The worry is the hardest part. Always wondering if you're overreacting or underreacting, if you should have brought him in sooner, or if you're being paranoid. Sounds exhausting." "It is. But it's also just life, you know? You adjust, find your rhythm, learn to trust your instincts." There was a pause before her next message. "Can I ask you something? And feel free to tell me to mind my own business." Lucas felt his pulse quicken slightly. "Go ahead. How long ago did you lose your wife?" The question was direct but not intrusive, asked with the kind of straightforwardness Lucas appreciated. He typed, 3 years, 2 months, 18 days, cancer. She fought hard, but in the end, it wasn't enough. "I'm so sorry, Lucas. That must have been incredibly difficult for both of you." "It was. Still is sometimes. But we manage. Noah's resilient, stronger than I am most days." "I doubt that. Takes a lot of strength to raise a kid alone, especially one who's been through loss." Lucas stared at the message, something tight loosening in his chest. When was the last time someone had acknowledged the work of what he was doing? Not just the logistics, the meals and the doctor's appointments and the homework help, but the emotional labor of being everything to someone while carrying your own grief? "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough, if he needs more than I can give him. From what I saw yesterday, that kid knows he's loved. That's more than a lot of children have. You're doing fine, Lucas. Better than fine." The conversation continued in fits and starts throughout the afternoon, neither of them pushing for constant engagement, but both responding when time and attention allowed. Lucas learned that Claire had been a police officer for 7 years, that she'd grown up in the same city they lived in now, that she'd become a cop because her father had been one before her. She asked about his work, about Noah's interests, about the small details that made up their daily life. It felt natural, easy, like talking to someone who didn't need him to be anything other than himself. By evening, when Noah woke from his nap with requests for soup and crackers, Lucas realized he'd been smiling at his phone for the better part of an hour. The recognition brought a flush of something, guilt, maybe, or embarrassment, or the strange vertigo of feeling something new after so long feeling nothing but grief and responsibility. "Dad?" Noah was watching him from the couch, his expression curious. "Why are you smiling at your phone?" "Just having a nice conversation with someone." Lucas set the phone aside, automatically reaching to check Noah's forehead. "How are you feeling? Ready for some food?" "Yeah, was it Officer Morgan?" Lucas hesitated, then decided on honesty. "Yes, it was." "What were you talking about?" "Just life stuff. She was checking on how you were doing, and we got to talking about other things. Nothing important." "You like her?" It wasn't a question. Noah stated it with the absolute certainty of a child who'd learned to read his father's moods and silences. "I don't really know her yet, buddy, but she seems like a good person. Is that okay?" Noah was quiet for a moment, his small face serious. When he finally spoke, his words were careful, measured. "Mom said you shouldn't be alone forever. I remember her saying that." The statement hit Lucas like a physical blow. He sat down heavily on the edge of the couch, struggling to keep his voice steady. "You remember that?" "Not really, but Grandma told me. She said Mom made her promise to tell me when I was old enough to understand. That she wanted you to be happy, and that being happy might mean finding someone new someday." Noah picked at a loose thread on his blanket. "I didn't really get what she meant before, but I think I do now." Lucas felt his throat close, tears pressing hot behind his eyes. Sarah had thought of everything, even this, even releasing him from the guilt he hadn't known he'd need permission to shed. "Come here." He pulled Noah into a careful hug, mindful of his still tender lungs. "I loved your mom very much. I still do. That doesn't change, no matter what happens or who I might meet. You understand that?" "I know, Dad. I love her too, but she's not here anymore, and Officer Morgan is. That's not bad. That's just different." The wisdom in his 8-year-old son's words made Lucas laugh, a wet sound caught between grief and hope. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't always notice because you're busy being worried about me. Fair point. Lucas released him, swiping at his eyes. All right, wise guy. Soup and crackers coming up. And then you're taking your evening meds and getting back to resting. Can I play on my tablet for a little while? Educational games only. Dad, I'm sick. Shouldn't I get to break the rules a little? Lucas laughed, the sound genuine this time. Nice try. Educational games or books. Pick your poison. While Noah settled in with his tablet and Lucas heated soup on the stove, his phone buzzed again. Claire, asking if he'd had dinner yet. The conversation had shifted into something more immediate, more present tense. Less about their histories and more about their actual lives, unfolding in real time. Not yet. Currently making chicken noodle soup for the patient. I'll probably eat later. You should eat too. Can't take care of him if you don't take care of yourself. Spoken like someone who understands the caretaker's dilemma. I might know a little about that. There was something in the way she said it, a hint of a larger story she wasn't quite telling. Lucas typed, "Your turn to share something. Fair's fair." A longer pause this time. Then, "My dad has early-stage dementia. I moved back home 2 years ago to help take care of him. So yeah, I get the caretaker thing. The wondering if you're doing enough. Doing it right? Doing it at all." Lucas stared at the message, pieces clicking into place, the weariness in her eyes, the way she'd seemed to understand without explanation, the quiet competence that came from managing crisis as a daily routine. "I'm sorry, that must be really hard. Some days more than others. He still has good days where he's almost himself. Those are getting rarer, though. Is it just you taking care of him?" "Yeah, he was a single dad. My mom left when I was young, so it's just us. Has been for a long time." Lucas felt a recognition so strong it was almost physical. They were mirrors of each other in some ways, both carrying the weight of caring for someone alone, both shaped by loss and responsibility, both probably far more isolated than they wanted to admit. "We should meet up sometime. In person, I mean. When Noah's feeling better and you have time. Just to talk. No pressure." The moment after he hit send felt eternal. Too forward. Too presumptuous. She'd offered friendship, and he was already pushing for more. Moving too fast because he'd been alone so long he'd forgotten how to do this slowly. "I'd like that. There's an ice cream place on Maple Street. Scoops. Low-key, kid-friendly. Maybe this weekend if Noah's up for it?" Relief flooded through him. "That sounds perfect." "It's a date." "Well, not a date. A friendly meeting. With ice cream. And your kid is a chaperone. The most thoroughly chaperoned not date in history." "Exactly. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people who could probably use an hour of adult conversation that doesn't involve medical updates or work deadlines." Looking forward to it. Lucas set the phone down and carried soup to Noah, who was deep in some educational math game that probably wasn't as educational as the package claimed, but that Lucas was willing to overlook given the circumstances. As he watched his son eat, slowly but with actual appetite, Lucas allowed himself to feel the unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. 3 years. 3 years of putting his life on hold, of telling himself that Noah needed stability more than Lucas needed companionship, that grief had no expiration date, and moving forward felt like betrayal. 3 years of well-meaning friends trying to set him up on dates he politely declined, of family members suggesting it was time, of his own reflection in the mirror growing more distant and hollow. And then a traffic stop. A moment of panic and poor judgment. A police officer who chose compassion over procedure. A text message sent before courage failed. Small choices that added up to possibility. The week passed in that suspended way time moves when you're waiting for something. Noah's recovery progressed steadily, the cough loosening, the fever staying gone, his energy returning in gradual increments. Lucas worked from home, taking calls and reviewing blueprints while keeping one ear tuned to his son's breathing, his attention split between professional responsibilities and parental vigilance. He and Claire texted throughout the week, their conversations developing the easy rhythm of people discovering they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. She told him about difficult calls and bureaucratic frustrations. He told her about impossible clients and the small triumphs of his work. They traded recommendations for books and movies, discovered a shared love of terrible puns, and carefully avoided talking too much about the upcoming weekend, as if acknowledging it too directly might jinx it somehow. On Friday, Dr. Morrison's office called to check on Noah. Lucas reported the improvement, answered questions about symptoms and medication compliance, and felt the official blessing to resume normal activities. School could wait until Monday, but ice cream on Saturday was cleared for takeoff. "So, we're really going?" Noah asked when Lucas told him, trying and failing to sound casual about it. "We're really going. Officer Morgan, Claire, suggested it. She thought it would be nice to see you when you weren't sick and miserable." "Is she going to be your girlfriend?" The question was so direct, so lacking in guile, that Lucas almost laughed. "I don't know, buddy. Right now she's someone who might become a friend. Is that okay?" "Yeah." Noah considered this. "I think it would be good for you to have friends. You're always working or taking care of me. You don't really do stuff just for you." The observation stung in its accuracy. "I like taking care of you. That's not a chore." "I know, but you could like other things too. Mom would want you to." There it was again, Sarah's voice coming through their son with perfect clarity. Lucas pulled Noah into a side hug, pressing a kiss to the top of his head. "You're pretty smart for someone who just figured out multiplication." "I'm smart for anyone, Shekta," Noah corrected, and Lucas laughed, because his son was absolutely right. Saturday arrived with the perfect weather that sometimes graces important days. Sunny but not hot, breezy but not cold, the kind of afternoon that feels designed for ice cream and new beginnings. Lucas changed his shirt 3 times before settling on something that looked casual but not sloppy, put together but not trying too hard. Noah watched this performance with amusement. "You're nervous," he observed. "A little bit, yeah." "She already likes you, Dad. You don't have to impress her." "How do you know she likes me?" "Because she keeps texting you, and she suggested ice cream. Nobody suggests ice cream if they don't like someone." Lucas smiled despite his nerves. That's actually pretty solid logic. They arrived at Scoops 10 minutes early, which gave Lucas time to second-guess everything about this plan. What if it was awkward? What if Noah didn't like Claire outside the crisis context of their first meeting? What if Lucas had built this up too much in his head and the reality couldn't possibly match his expectations? Claire arrived exactly on time, pulling up in a civilian car, a sensible Honda that looked nothing like her patrol cruiser. She'd traded her uniform for jeans and a light sweater, her hair down instead of pulled back. Without the badge and the authority of her profession, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more real. "Hey." She smiled as she approached, and Lucas felt his nervousness settle slightly. It was the same smile from their first meeting, warm, genuine, slightly tentative. "Hey yourself, thanks for suggesting this." "Thanks for saying yes." She turned to Noah, crouching slightly to meet his eyes. "And look at you, looking way better than last week. How are you feeling?" "Better. The medicine worked." Noah offered his hand for a shake, formal and sweet. "Thank you for helping us." Claire shook his hand solemnly. "You're very welcome. I'm glad you're okay. Now, the important question, what's your favorite ice cream flavor?" "Mint chocolate chip." "What's yours?" "Same. Excellent taste." "Your dad?" "Cookie dough," Lucas admitted. "I know, boring choice." "Cookie dough is classic, not boring. There's a difference." Claire held the door open for them, and they entered the small shop with its cheerful striped awnings and overwhelming selection of flavors. The next hour passed with the kind of easy comfort that usually takes much longer to develop. They sat at a small table by the window, ice cream slowly melting as conversation flowed. Claire asked Noah about school, about his favorite subjects, about what he wanted to be when he grew up. Noah answered with increasing enthusiasm, his natural reserve melting under her genuine interest. Lucas watched them interact and felt something shift inside him, not replacing his love for Sarah, but making room for something new alongside it. Claire laughed at Noah's jokes, took his opinions seriously, and didn't treat him like a tragedy to be pitied. She engaged with him as a person, not as a widower's son, and Noah bloomed under that simple respect. "So," Claire said, turning to Lucas while Noah focused on his ice cream with laser intensity, "Noah tells me you design buildings." "I do, mostly commercial and residential, some public projects. It's not as glamorous as it sounds." I don't know. Designing spaces where people live and work seems pretty important to me. You're literally shaping the environment people experience every day. Lucas felt himself warm under her attention. I never thought of it that way. But, yeah, I guess that's true. What about you? Always wanted to be a cop? Following in my dad's footsteps. He was on the force for 30 years before he retired. I grew up on stories about helping people, making a difference. The reality is more complicated than I expected. But there are moments, like helping you guys last week, that remind me why I wanted to do this. Do you ever regret it? Claire considered the question seriously. Sometimes. The hours are terrible, the pay could be better, and people generally only call you when something's already gone wrong. But I'm good at it, and it matters. That counts for something. Noah looked up from his ice cream, a mint chocolate chip mustache decorating his upper lip. Do you arrest bad guys? Sometimes. But mostly, I help people who need help and try to keep everyone safe. The exciting stuff you see on TV doesn't happen as often as you'd think. That sounds kind of boring, Claire laughed. Some days it is, but boring is good in my line of work. Boring means everyone's safe and nothing terrible is happening. Oh, that makes sense. Noah returned to his ice cream, satisfied with this explanation. Lucas caught Claire's eye across the table, and something passed between them. A shared amusement at Noah's directness, but also something deeper. Recognition. Understanding. The beginning of something neither of them had been looking for, but both seemed ready to explore. Can I ask you something? Claire's voice was quieter now, meant just for Lucas, while Noah was distracted. How are you really doing? Not the polite answer you give when people ask. The real one. The question caught him off guard with its sincerity. People asked how he was doing all the time, but they wanted the comfortable answer, the one that didn't require them to sit with difficult emotions. Claire was asking for truth. I'm okay, he said slowly, testing the words. Better than I was a year ago. Better than I thought I'd be. Some days are harder than others, but we've found our rhythm, Noah and me. We're building a life that works, even if it's not the life I expected to be living. That's honest. I appreciate that. Claire glanced at Noah, then back to Lucas. I meant what I said in my texts, about you doing better than fine. It shows, the way he looks at you, the way he trusts you, that doesn't happen by accident. Lucas felt his throat tighten. I'm just doing what any parent would do. No, you're doing what good parents do. There's a difference, and you don't give yourself enough credit. Before Lucas could respond, Noah tugged at his sleeve. Dad, can I go look at the arcade games? He pointed to a small corner of the shop where a couple of vintage arcade machines sat. Stay where I can see you, Lucas said automatically, then handed Noah a couple of quarters. And don't put your face against the screen. Noah rolled his eyes, but took the quarters and headed for the games, leaving Lucas and Claire alone at the table. He's a great kid, Claire said, watching Noah line up his shot on an old-school racing game. He is. Sometimes I worry I'm not enough for him, that he needs more than just me. Can I tell you something my dad used to say, before the dementia took so much of him? Lucas nodded. He told me that kids don't need perfect. They need present. They need someone who shows up, who tries, who loves them even when it's hard. You're present, Lucas. That's everything. The words settled over him like a benediction, releasing guilt he hadn't fully acknowledged he was carrying. Your dad sounds like he was a wise man. He is, on his good days. Most days now he doesn't remember what he had for breakfast, but sometimes he'll have these moments of perfect clarity where he's completely himself again. Those moments are getting rarer. Claire's voice caught slightly. I'm watching him disappear in slow motion, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. Lucas reached across the table, covering her hand with his. The gesture was instinctive, offered without calculation. I'm sorry. That has to be incredibly painful. It is, but it's also taught me to appreciate the present moment, to not take the good days for granted. She turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. The contact felt natural, right in a way that didn't need examination. Which is why I'm glad we did this. Glad you told me the truth about the ring. Glad I got to see you both when you're not in crisis mode. Me too. Lucas meant it. This afternoon, sitting in an ice cream shop with melting dessert and easy conversation, felt like the first normal thing he'd done in years. Not normal in the sense of unremarkable, but normal in the sense of healthy, of moving forward, of allowing himself to want something beyond mere survival. Noah returned from the arcade, his quarters spent and his energy flagging slightly. "Dad, I'm getting tired." Lucas checked his watch, surprised to find they'd been there for over an hour. "Ready to head home? Can Claire come with us? We could watch a movie or something." The invitation was so earnest, so hopeful, that Lucas's heart squeezed. He looked at Claire, giving her an out if she needed it. "You don't have to—" "I'd like that," Claire said, cutting off his escape clause. "If you're sure. I don't want to intrude." "You wouldn't be intruding, right, buddy?" "Right," Noah confirmed. "We have good movies. And popcorn. Dad makes really good popcorn." "Well, if there's really good popcorn involved, how can I say no?" They drove separately to Lucas's house, a small craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and carefully maintained lawns. Lucas felt a flutter of anxiety as he unlocked the door. What would Claire see when she looked at the space he and Noah had carved out? Would she notice the kid drawings on the refrigerator, the scattered Legos in the corner, the photos of Sarah still hanging on the walls because Lucas couldn't bring himself to take them down? If she noticed, she didn't comment. Instead, she took in the lived-in comfort of the space, the worn couch with its collection of throw pillows, the bookshelf overflowing with both adult literature and children's books, the workspace in the corner where Lucas's architectural drawings shared space with Noah's art projects. "This is nice," she said, and it sounded sincere. "It feels like a home." "It's a work in progress. Always." Lucas gestured toward the couch. "Make yourself comfortable. Noah, go pick a movie, something we can all actually watch." Noah disappeared into his room to survey their options, leaving Lucas and Claire standing in the living room with the sudden awkwardness of people alone together for the first time in private space. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" Lucas moved toward the kitchen, needing the familiarity of host duties to ground him. "Water would be great." Claire followed him, leaning against the counter while he pulled glasses from the cabinet. "Lucas, can I say something?" His hand stilled. "Of course. I know this is all pretty fast. We barely know each other, and there's a lot of complicated stuff for both of us. But I want you to know that I'm not here because I feel sorry for you, or because I'm looking for some kind of project. I'm here because I like you. I like talking to you. I like the way you are with your son. And I'd like to keep getting to know you, at whatever pace feels right." She paused. "But if this feels like too much, or if you need more time, I need you to tell me, okay?" Lucas set down the glass he'd been filling and turned to face her fully. "I like you too. More than I expected to, honestly. And it scares me a little, because I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah, and I'm not sure I remember how to do this, but I want to try." "Then we'll try together. Figure it out as we go." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Noah's return interrupted the moment, his arms full of DVD cases. "I have options. There's the dragon movie we've been watching, or there's the space adventure one, or there's the funny one about the dogs." Claire surveyed the selection. "What's the funny one about the dogs?" "They talk and they have to save their owner from aliens." "Sold. I'm always up for talking dogs versus aliens." They settled on the couch, Noah in the middle, Lucas on one side, Claire on the other. It was a careful arrangement, respecting boundaries while still sharing space. Lucas made popcorn as promised, and they watched the movie with half their attention, the other half focused on the simple comfort of not being alone. Halfway through, Noah fell asleep against Lucas's side, worn out from his first real outing since being sick. Lucas shifted carefully to make him more comfortable, and Claire helped arrange a blanket without waking him. "He crashes hard when he's recovering," Lucas whispered. "Usually sleeps for hours." "Should I go? Let you put him to bed?" "Not yet. If you don't mind staying, we could actually talk without translating everything into 8-year-old appropriate conversation." Claire smiled. "I'd like that." They moved to the kitchen, leaving Noah sleeping peacefully on the couch, the movie playing to an audience of one unconscious child. Lucas poured them both water and they sat at the small kitchen table, the conversation picking up threads from earlier and weaving them into something deeper. Claire told him about her father, about the man he'd been before the disease started stealing him away piece by piece. A decorated officer who'd raised a daughter alone, who'd taught her to change a tire and throw a punch and stand up for what mattered. About watching that strength fade, about becoming the parent to her parent, about the loneliness of carrying that burden alone. Lucas told her about Sarah, about their life together, about the slow horror of watching cancer take her, about the guilt of feeling relieved when it was finally over, about learning to be both mother and father to a traumatized child, about the wedding ring he still wore because taking it off felt like erasing her existence. They talked about the logistics of single life, the isolation, the exhaustion, the way people either treated you like you were contagious or like you were somehow noble for doing what needed to be done. About wanting to be seen as more than just your circumstances, about the hunger for adult connection that wasn't about your responsibilities or your grief. Can I ask you something that might be too personal? Claire's fingers traced patterns on her water glass. After everything we've shared tonight, I think we're past that boundary. The ring. Are you keeping it because you still feel married or because you're afraid of what taking it off means? Lucas looked down at the band on his finger, spinning it once. Both, maybe. When I wear it, people make assumptions that are easier than explaining I'm widowed, but I think it's also become a shield. As long as I'm wearing it, I don't have to risk anything. I'm protected by the past. And now? Now I'm thinking maybe it's time to stop hiding behind protection. He looked up, meeting her eyes. Not because I don't love Sarah anymore, but because I'm starting to think I might be ready to love something new too. Someone new. The words hung in the air between them, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. Claire reached across the table, her hand finding his. I'm not asking you to take it off tonight, or tomorrow, or any time before you're ready. I just need to know that eventually there's space for something real here. Not just friendship, not just convenience, something that could actually matter. There's space, Lucas said, his voice rough with emotion. I want there to be space. I'm just still figuring out what that looks like. That's enough. That's more than enough. They sat in the quiet of his kitchen, hands linked across the table, while Noah slept in the next room and the future felt less terrifying than it had in years. There would be complications ahead. There always were. Questions about pacing and boundaries and blending complicated lives. But for now, in this moment, there was just possibility and honesty and the tentative beginning of something neither of them had been looking for, but both seemed ready to build. Claire left around 10 that night, after Noah had been carried to bed still half asleep and tucked in with his favorite stuffed dragon. Lucas walked her to her car, the neighborhood quiet except for the distant sound of a dog barking and the rustle of wind through the trees that lined the street. Thank you for today, he said, hands in his pockets to keep from reaching for her too soon, too eagerly. For being patient with all of this. With me. There's nothing to be patient about. We're both just figuring it out as we go. She unlocked her car but didn't immediately get in. Can I see you again? Maybe without the 8-year-old chaperone next time. Lucas smiled. I'd like that. Though fair warning, scheduling adult time is like solving a complex equation. I'll need to arrange for my mom to watch Noah, and she'll ask a million questions. And, Lucas, Claire's hand touched his arm, gentle but grounding. Breathe. I'm not going anywhere. We don't have to rush this. I know. I just haven't done this in so long. I'm not sure I remember how. Neither have I, really. So we'll be terrible at it together, remember? She stepped closer, and Lucas was acutely aware of how easy it would be to close the remaining distance between them. How about next Saturday? Dinner somewhere quiet where we can actually hear each other talk? That sounds perfect. Good. Text me during the week and we'll figure out details. She hesitated, then rose on her toes and pressed a quick kiss to his cheek. Good night, Lucas. Good night, Claire. He watched her drive away, his hand unconsciously moving to where her lips had touched his skin. The gesture had been brief, almost innocent, but it had sparked something in him that felt dangerously close to hope. Inside, the house felt different somehow. Still quiet, still filled with the same furniture and memories, but lighter. As if Claire's presence had opened windows Lucas hadn't realized were closed, letting in air he hadn't known he needed. He checked on Noah one more time, adjusting the blanket that had already been kicked half off, then retreated to his own room. The wedding ring caught the lamplight as he reached to turn it off, gold gleaming with all the weight of what it represented. Not tonight, he thought, but soon. The week that followed established a pattern that would come to define the next month of their lives. Lucas and Claire texted throughout each day, their conversations weaving between the mundane and the meaningful. She'd send him photos from her patrol, funny signs, or unusual calls that didn't violate confidentiality but gave him glimpses into her world. He'd share Noah's latest pronouncements or problems he was solving at work, architectural challenges that she found surprisingly interesting. Their actual date on Saturday was everything the ice cream shop had promised, and more. They went to a small Italian restaurant tucked into a neighborhood Lucas had driven past 100 times, but never stopped to explore. Over pasta and wine, they talked for 3 hours, the conversation flowing with the ease of people who'd already laid the foundation of real friendship. Claire told him about her mother, who'd left when Claire was 6. Not dramatically, not with fights or affairs, but simply with a note on the kitchen table and a forwarding address that turned out to be false. About growing up as the daughter of a cop who tried to be both parents, who taught her to be strong and capable, but also left her uncertain about her own worthiness of staying. Lucas told her about his parents' messy divorce when he was 12, about choosing to pursue architecture because his father had called it impractical, about meeting Sarah in college and knowing within 3 dates that he wanted to marry her, about the guilt of feeling happy again when happiness felt like betrayal. "Can I ask you something?" Claire set down her wine glass, her expression serious. "And I need you to be completely honest, even if you think it might hurt my feelings." "Okay." Lucas felt his pulse quicken. "Are you really ready for this? Or are you trying to be ready because you think you should be, or because you're lonely, or because Noah gave you permission?" She held up a hand before he could answer. "I'm not judging any of those reasons. I just need to know what I'm walking into. Because I really like you, Lucas. More than I expected to. And I don't want to invest in something that's going to fall apart the first time it gets hard because you weren't actually ready to let go." The honesty of the question deserved an equally honest answer. Lucas took his time, considering his words carefully. "A month ago, I would have said no. I would have said I was fine with my life the way it was, that Noah and work were enough, that I didn't need anything else. But that would have been a lie I was telling myself because it felt safer than wanting something I might not be able to have." He met her eyes directly. "Meeting you didn't make me ready. It made me realize I'd been ready for a while and just too scared to admit it. Does that make sense?" "Yeah, it does. But I also need you to know that this is complicated for me. There are going to be moments when I feel guilty, or when I compare things to how they were with Sarah, or when I panic because caring about you means risking loss again. I can't promise I won't stumble. I can only promise I'll try to be honest about it when I do." Claire reached across the table, lacing her fingers through his. "I can work with honest. Honest is all I need." They stayed until the restaurant staff started giving them meaningful looks and stacking chairs on nearby tables. Walking back to their cars, Claire's hand found his naturally, their fingers intertwining as if they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. "Can I tell you something?" Lucas said as they reached her car. "Something that might be too much too soon. I think we're past that boundary too. I'm falling for you, not just attraction, actually falling, the way that feels terrifying and exciting and inevitable all at once." Claire's smile was soft, almost relieved. "Good, because I'm falling for you too, and it was starting to feel awkward being the only one." This time when she kissed him, it wasn't a quick brush against his cheek, but a real kiss, her hand cupping his jaw as his arms came around her waist. It was sweet and searching and achingly tender. The kind of first kiss that promised depth beneath the surface attraction. When they finally pulled apart, Lucas was breathless. "I should probably get home. My mom's watching Noah and she has a curfew for babysitting, and I have an early shift tomorrow." But neither of them moved, reluctant to end the moment. "Same time next week?" "Definitely." He drove home with the taste of her still on his lips and something singing in his chest that he'd thought died with Sarah. It wasn't the same feeling, nothing would ever be exactly what he'd had before. But it was good in its own right, its own way. Something new and specific to Claire, to who they were together rather than who he'd been before. His mother was waiting in the living room when he got home, a knowing smile on her face. "You're glowing." "I'm not glowing, Mom." "You absolutely are. How was dinner?" "It was good, really good." Lucas couldn't help his own smile, couldn't diminish it even if he wanted to. "Claire's, she's special." "I can see that. I'm happy for you, sweetheart. You deserve this." His mother stood, gathering her purse. Noah was an angel, by the way. We read 3 chapters of his dragon book, and he went down without a fight. He asked about Claire, though. Wanted to know if she was going to be around more. "What did you tell him?" "That you'd answer any questions he had, because I'm smart enough not to wade into that particular conversation." She kissed his cheek. But for what it's worth, he seemed hopeful about the idea. "Don't let your guilt about Sarah keep you from something good, Lucas. She wouldn't want that." After his mother left, Lucas looked in on Noah, finding him sprawled across his bed in the boneless way only sleeping children could achieve. The dragon book was still on his nightstand, bookmark carefully placed. On his dresser, in a small frame, was a photo of Sarah holding newborn Noah, her smile radiant despite the exhaustion in her eyes. Lucas picked up the frame, studying Sarah's face. "I hope this is okay," he whispered. "I hope wherever you are, you're not angry with me. I still love you." "That hasn't changed. But I think I'm starting to love her too, and I don't know how to hold both of those things without feeling like I'm failing you." The photo offered no answers, but somehow Lucas felt lighter for having asked the question aloud. He set it back on the dresser, kissed Noah's forehead, and went to his own room where the wedding ring waited on his nightstand like a question he wasn't quite ready to answer. The next month unfolded with the kind of easy progression that made Lucas nervous precisely because it felt too good to be true. He and Claire fell into a rhythm of Saturday night dates when his mother could watch Noah, and Wednesday lunch meetings when Claire had time between shifts. They texted constantly, shared pieces of their days, and slowly began integrating their separate lives into something that felt increasingly like a shared future. Noah warmed to Claire in the uncomplicated way children do when they sense genuine affection. She came to his school art show, sat through his painfully sincere piano recital, and listened with real interest to his detailed explanations of Minecraft strategies Lucas couldn't begin to follow. She never tried to be his mother, never overstepped, but she showed up consistently, and that mattered more than grand gestures. Lucas met Claire's father on a quiet Sunday afternoon, after weeks of Claire preparing him for what to expect. Robert Morgan was a tall man with silver hair and shrewd eyes that occasionally went distant, losing the thread of conversation before snapping back to sharp focus. He was having a good day when Lucas visited, clear-eyed and present, and he grilled Lucas about his intentions toward his daughter with a cop's precision. "She's been alone too long," Robert said bluntly when Claire had stepped out to take a phone call. "Taking care of me, working too hard, not letting anyone close enough to help. You break her heart, and I'll forget I'm retired." I don't intend to break her heart, sir. Nobody ever does. But life happens. People get scared, things fall apart. Robert's eyes were sharp, measuring. Question is, when it gets hard, because it will get hard, are you going to run or are you going to stay and work through it? "I'm going to stay." Lucas said it with more certainty than he felt, but he meant it nonetheless. "Good. That's what she needs, someone who stays." The conversation stayed with Lucas long after they'd left Robert's house. That night, lying in bed, he finally worked up the courage to do what he'd been considering for weeks. He took off the wedding ring, feeling the ghost of its weight on his finger, and placed it in the small wooden box on his dresser where he kept Sarah's other jewelry, not throwing it away, not erasing what it meant, but acknowledging that its time on his hand was over. The next morning, Noah noticed immediately. "You took off Mom's ring." It wasn't a question, just an observation delivered while eating cereal before school. "Yeah, I did. Is that okay?" Noah considered this, his spoon suspended halfway to his mouth. "Does it mean you don't love her anymore?" "No, buddy. It means I'll always love her, but I'm ready to move forward, to build something new without feeling like I'm leaving her behind." Lucas sat down across from him. "Does it bother you?" "A little bit, but also not really?" Noah's face scrunched in concentration. "It's weird seeing your hand without it, but Claire makes you smile more, and you seem less sad." So I think it's good weird, not bad weird. Good weird is okay with you? Yeah, good weird is okay. Noah returned to his cereal, the matter apparently settled in his 8-year-old mind with far more ease than it had been in Lucas's adult one. Lucas looked down at his bare left hand, at the pale band of skin where the ring had been. It would take time for that mark to fade, for his hand to look normal again. But he'd made the choice, and it felt right in a way few things had felt since Sarah's death. He told Claire that evening during one of their phone calls after Noah was asleep. "I took off the ring," he said without preamble. "I wanted you to know." There was a long pause on the other end. When Claire spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. "Are you okay?" "I think so." It felt strange at first, but right, like closing a chapter that was already over and just acknowledging it officially. "Thank you for telling me." "And Lucas, I know this isn't about me, not really. It's about you being ready. But I'm honored to be part of your life while you figure all this out. It is about you, though. At least partly. Meeting you showed me that moving forward didn't mean forgetting or betraying. It just meant choosing to live fully again instead of in half measures. I love you." The words came softly, as if she'd been holding them back and they'd finally escaped. "I didn't mean to say it yet. It's too soon, but I do. I love you." Lucas felt his chest expand with something too big for words. "I love you too. And it's not too soon. It's exactly right." They talked for another hour, the conversation wandering through hopes and fears, and the practical logistics of blending lives. By the time they said goodnight, Lucas felt settled in a way he hadn't since before Sarah's diagnosis, as if pieces of himself he'd locked away were finally safe to retrieve. The trouble started 3 weeks later, on an ordinary Wednesday that should have been unremarkable. Lucas was in the middle of a client presentation when his phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. He ignored it, focusing on explaining the revised plans for a commercial development project. But it buzzed again, and again. During a break, he checked the messages. They were from Robert Morgan's home care nurse. "Mr. Hale, this is Janet from Caring Hearts Home Health. Claire listed you as an emergency contact. I'm trying to reach her, but she's not answering. Her father had a fall this morning. He's okay, but he's very confused and asking for her. Can you help?" Lucas's stomach dropped. He called Claire immediately, getting her voicemail. Tried again, still voicemail. He texted, "Claire, your dad had a fall. The nurse is trying to reach you. Call me when you get this." Then he called Janet back. "I can't reach Claire either. Is Robert hurt? Does he need a hospital?" "No hospital, just some bruising, but he's very agitated, doesn't remember why Claire isn't here. I can handle the physical care, but he needs family." Janet's voice was kind but firm. "I know this isn't your responsibility, but I didn't know who else to call." Lucas looked at his presentation materials, at the client waiting in the conference room, at the career he'd built, and the professional reputation he maintained. Then he thought about Claire, who'd shown up for him and Noah without hesitation, who'd reorganized her entire life to care for a father slowly slipping away. "Give me the address. I'll be there in 20 minutes." He made apologies to the client, promised Marcus would handle the rest of the presentation, and drove across town to the small house where Claire had grown up. Janet met him at the door, relief clear on her face. "He's in the living room. I got him settled in his chair, but he's asking for Claire every few minutes. I tried to explain she's at work, but he keeps forgetting." Robert was sitting in a worn recliner, a bruise blooming on his temple and confusion clouding eyes that had been sharp just weeks ago. He looked up when Lucas entered, his expression cycling through recognition and bewilderment. "You're Claire's young man, the architect." "Yes, sir. Lucas Hale. Claire's at work right now, but I wanted to check on you. I heard you had a fall." "Did I? I don't remember falling." Robert's hand went to his temple, touching the bruise gingerly. "Where's Claire? She should be here." "She's working, but she'll be home as soon as she can. Is it okay if I sit with you for a bit?" "I suppose that's fine. Though I don't know why you're here if Claire's not." The confusion was painful to witness, this proud man reduced to fragments of himself. Lucas spent the next 2 hours sitting with Robert, who cycled through moments of clarity and stretches of bewilderment. Sometimes he knew exactly who Lucas was and asked shrewd questions about his relationship with Claire. Other times he thought Lucas was someone from the department, or got angry about things that had happened decades ago, or forgot why a stranger was in his house. Janet checked on them periodically, grateful for the help, but clearly concerned. "This is worse than usual," she told Lucas quietly. "The fall seems to have accelerated things. It happens sometimes with dementia patients." Finally, around 3 in the afternoon, Claire burst through the front door. Her face was pale, her expression stricken. "I'm so sorry. I was in a situation that went sideways and I couldn't get to my phone. I got all the messages at once and—" She stopped, seeing Lucas sitting with her father. "You came." "Of course I came." "Claire!" Robert's face lit up with recognition. "Where have you been? This young man has been keeping me company, but I kept telling him you were at work." "I was at work, Dad, but I'm here now." She moved to his side, kneeling beside his chair to check the bruise on his temple. "What happened?" "Janet said you fell." "I don't remember falling." "Did I fall?" Claire's eyes met Lucas's over her father's head, and he saw the fear there, the exhaustion, the weight of watching someone disappear. He stood, giving them space but not leaving. "Let me help," he said quietly. "Tell me what you need." Over the next few hours, Lucas learned the reality of what Claire had been carrying alone. The constant vigilance, the emotional whiplash of good days and terrible ones, the guilt of wanting her own life while knowing her father needed her. Janet left at her scheduled time, and Lucas stayed, helping Claire make dinner that Robert barely touched, redirecting him when he got agitated, bearing witness to the slow heartbreak of dementia's progression. By the time Robert finally fell asleep in his chair, Claire looked like she might shatter. Lucas guided her to the kitchen, where she collapsed into a chair and put her head in her hands. "This is getting worse. The nurse said the fall accelerated things. I don't know how much longer I can manage this at home." Her voice was muffled, defeated, but I promised him I wouldn't put him in a facility. He was terrified of ending up in one of those places. I promised. Lucas crouched beside her chair, his hands covering hers. "Claire, look at me." She raised her head, tears streaming down her face. "You are not failing him. You've been doing this alone for 2 years, and you've been amazing. But you can't do it alone anymore. You need help. Real help, not just a nurse for a few hours a day." I know, but..." Her voice broke. "If I put him in memory care, I'm breaking my promise. I'm giving up on him." "You're not giving up. You're recognizing that he needs more than you can give him by yourself. There's a difference." Lucas squeezed her hands. "And you're not alone anymore. I'm here. Let me help carry this. You have Noah. You have your work. You can't just drop everything to help me manage my father's decline. Can't I? You dropped everything to help me get Noah to a doctor. You showed up at his art show. You've been there for us without hesitation." He wiped tears from her cheeks with his thumb. "Let me be there for you. This isn't a traffic stop or an art show, Lucas. This is months, maybe years, of things getting progressively worse, of watching him disappear, of making impossible decisions about his care. I can't ask you to sign up for that." "You're not asking. I'm offering. There's a difference." Claire pulled her hands from his, standing abruptly and moving to the window. "You don't understand what you're saying. This gets ugly. He gets mean sometimes, says terrible things he doesn't mean. He forgets who I am. Last week he thought I was my mother and spent an hour berating me for leaving him." Her shoulders shook. "I don't want you to see me drowning. I don't want Noah exposed to this. I don't want to drag you both into this mess." Lucas stood, crossing to her. He didn't touch her, sensing she needed space, but he spoke with quiet intensity. "I lost my wife to cancer. I know what it looks like when someone you love slips away. I know how it feels to be helpless while they suffer. I know the guilt and the grief and the exhaustion of caring for someone who's dying by inches." He paused. "And I know how much I needed support I was too proud to ask for. Don't make the same mistake I did, Claire. Don't push away help because you think you're supposed to carry this alone." "What if it's too much?" Her voice was small, vulnerable in a way he'd never heard. "What if you decide it's not worth it? What if you walk away and I've let myself depend on you, and then I'm even more alone than before?" The fear beneath her words was devastating in its honesty. Lucas realized with sudden clarity that this wasn't just about her father. This was about her mother leaving, about learning young that people don't stay when things get hard, about building walls so high that letting someone in felt like inviting inevitable betrayal. I'm not going to walk away. He said it simply, with absolute conviction. Not when it gets hard, not when it gets ugly, not when you push me away because you're scared. I'm here, Claire. I'm choosing to be here. Let me. She turned to face him, searching his expression for doubt or reservation. Whatever she saw there seemed to satisfy her, because she stepped into his arms, burying her face against his chest. He held her while she cried, the kind of deep, wrenching sobs that come from finally allowing yourself to break in front of someone you trust. I'm so tired, she whispered against his shirt. I'm so tired of pretending I have this under control. I know, but you don't have to pretend anymore, not with me. They stood like that until her tears subsided, until her breathing steadied, until she could pull back and look at him with red-rimmed eyes that held something fragile and new. Okay, she said softly. Okay, help me figure this out. Over the next week, Lucas became intimately familiar with the infrastructure of elder care in their city. He attended meetings with social workers, toured memory care facilities with Claire, researched options and costs and quality ratings. He brought Noah with him sometimes, explaining carefully what was happening and why it mattered to help people they cared about. Noah surprised him by understanding more than Lucas expected. Is Claire's dad like how Mom was at the end? He asked one evening, when she didn't remember things right. A little bit, yeah. His brain isn't working the way it used to, and it makes him confused and scared. That must be really sad for Claire. It is, which is why we're helping, because that's what you do for people you love. You show up, even when it's hard. I love Claire, Noah said it matter-of-factly, as if it were simply true and required no examination. So we should help. Yeah, buddy, we should. They found a memory care facility that felt right, small, home-like, with staff who treated residents with dignity rather than condescension. The cost was astronomical, but Claire's father had a pension and benefits that would cover most of it. The real cost was emotional. The guilt of breaking a promise even when keeping it was no longer possible. The day they moved Robert into the facility, Lucas took the day off work and brought Noah. Claire had protested, said they didn't need to be there for this, but Lucas had insisted. They showed up as family because that's what they were becoming, whether Claire was ready to admit it or not. Robert had a moment of clarity as they helped him settle into his room, recognized Claire and understood where he was. You're doing the right thing, sweetheart, he told her, his hand cupping her cheek. I know you promised, but I release you from that promise. I don't want you sacrificing your life for mine. Then the clarity faded, and he asked where they were again, but the gift of that moment sustained Claire through the hardest parts of the transition. That evening, after Robert was settled and they'd returned to Claire's house, she and Lucas sat on her porch while Noah played in the yard with a soccer ball they'd found in her garage. Thank you, Claire said quietly, for not letting me push you away, for showing up even when I told you not to. That's what love is, isn't it? Showing up especially when someone tells you not to, because you know they need you anyway. Is that what this is? Love? Lucas took her hand, lacing their fingers together. Yeah, I think it is. The real kind. The kind that stays through hard things. Claire leaned her head on his shoulder, watching Noah chase the soccer ball across her lawn with determined concentration. I think I'm ready to believe that you'll stay, that this is real. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. He kissed the top of her head. We're in this together now. All the messy, complicated, beautiful parts of it. All of it, she agreed, and for the first time in weeks her voice carried hope instead of just exhaustion. In the yard, Noah scored an imaginary goal and threw his arms up in triumph. Claire laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in days, and Lucas felt something settle in his chest. They were building something here, the three of them. Something real and lasting, forged not in easy moments, but in the choice to show up for each other when it mattered most. It wasn't the life he'd planned when he'd run that red light all those weeks ago. It was better, messier, more complex, and infinitely more worth fighting for. And as Claire's hand tightened in his, and Noah called for them to watch his next goal attempt, Lucas realized he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The weeks following Robert's move to memory care should have been a period of relief, a chance for Claire to finally breathe after 2 years of constant vigilance. Instead, Lucas watched her struggle with a guilt so profound it seemed to hollow her out from the inside. She visited her father every day after her shift, sometimes twice a day, as if the frequency of her presence could somehow compensate for what she saw as her failure to keep him home. Lucas went with her when he could, bringing Noah on weekends so Robert could have moments of connection with the child who seemed to occasionally pierce through his confusion. But he also watched Claire grow thinner, more withdrawn, the lightness that had characterized their early relationship dimming under the weight of her self-recrimination. Came to a head on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the move. Lucas had arranged for his mother to watch Noah so he could take Claire to dinner, hoping to pull her out of the spiral she'd been caught in. They went to the same Italian restaurant where they'd had their first real date, but the magic of that evening felt impossibly distant. Claire picked at her pasta, her responses to his attempts at conversation monosyllabic and distracted. Finally, Lucas set down his fork and reached across the table to still her restless hands. "Talk to me. Really talk to me. You've been pulling away for weeks, and I don't know how to help if you won't let me in." "I'm not pulling away." But even as she said it, she withdrew her hands from his, proving his point. "Claire, I love you, but I can't watch you disappear into guilt over a decision that was the right one and the only one you could make." His voice was gentle but firm. "Your dad is safe. He's getting professional care 24 hours a day. The last time we visited, he didn't even realize he wasn't at home. You did the right thing." "Then why does it feel like I abandoned him?" Her voice cracked. "Why do I feel like the worst daughter in the world every time I leave that facility?" "Because you love him, and watching him decline is devastating. But punishing yourself won't change his condition. It's just making you suffer too, and he wouldn't want that." Claire's laugh was bitter. "You don't know what he'd want. Half the time he doesn't know what he wants. Yesterday he thought I was a nurse and asked me to find his daughter. Do you know what that feels like? To have your own father look right through you?" "Actually, I do." Lucas's voice was quiet but steady. "Sarah didn't recognize me the last 3 days of her life. She kept asking for her husband, and I'd tell her I was right there, and she'd get agitated because she didn't see me. She saw a stranger. So yeah, Claire, I know exactly what that feels like." The comparison seemed to break through her defenses. She looked at him with eyes full of pain. "How did you survive it? How did you keep showing up when it hurt that much?" "Because the alternative was worse. Because even when she didn't know me, I still knew her. My presence still mattered, even if she couldn't recognize it." He paused. "And because I had to believe that somewhere, beneath the confusion and the pain, some part of her knew I hadn't left, that I was keeping my promise to stay until the end." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so tired, Lucas. I'm tired of being strong, tired of making impossible choices, tired of pretending I'm handling this when I'm falling apart." "Then stop pretending. Fall apart. I've got you." He stood, moving around the table to crouch beside her chair. "But you need to stop punishing yourself for being human, for needing help, for making the choice that kept both of you safe even though it wasn't the choice you wanted to make." "I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to forgive myself." "Then let me help you learn. Let me carry some of this weight until you're strong enough to see yourself clearly again." His hands framed her face, thumbs wiping away tears. "You are not your mother, Claire. You didn't abandon him. You didn't run away when things got hard. You stayed and fought and made the best decision you could with impossible options. That's not weakness. That's love." The comparison to her mother seemed to strike something deep. Claire had mentioned her mother only in passing, but Lucas understood that wound had never fully healed. That fear of becoming the person who'd left had shaped every choice she'd made since childhood. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared that if I let myself off the hook, if I stop punishing myself, it means I don't care enough. That I'm becoming someone who gives up when things get hard." "Love isn't measured in suffering, Claire. It's measured in showing up, in making hard choices, in doing what's best even when it costs you everything." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You've been showing up every single day. That's enough. You're enough." She cried then, really cried, the kind of soul-deep weeping that comes from finally releasing grief you've been holding back. Lucas held her, uncaring of the curious looks from other diners, focused only on being the solid presence she needed while her world shook apart. The restaurant staff, bless them, brought the check discreetly and gave them space. Lucas left cash on the table and guided Claire out to his car, where they sat in the parking lot while she collected herself. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice raw. "I'm sorry for pushing you away, for not letting you help, for being a mess." "You don't have to apologize for being human, for struggling. That's what I'm here for." He took her hand. "But I need you to promise me something. Promise me you'll stop trying to carry this alone, that you'll let me in, even when it's ugly, especially when it's ugly." "I promise. I'll try anyway." She squeezed his hand. "I love you. I know I haven't been showing it lately, but I do. More than I thought I could love anyone." "I know. I love you too, which is why I'm not going anywhere, even when you try to push me away." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, Claire's head on his shoulder, their hands linked. Finally, she spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "Lucas, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you ever regret it? Letting me into your life? Taking on my problems when you already have your own?" He turned to look at her, making sure she could see the sincerity in his expression. "Not for a second. You're not a problem, Claire. You're a person I love who's going through something hard. There's a difference." "Even when I'm like this? Falling apart and pulling away and probably not very pleasant to be around?" "Especially then, because that's when you need me most." He kissed her forehead. "Besides, you've seen me at my worst too. Panic attacks when Noah's fever spikes. Crying over old photos. Wearing the same shirt 3 days in a row because I forgot to do laundry. You didn't run. Why would I?" That earned him a small smile, the first genuine one he'd seen in weeks. "Those are not comparable. Your worst is just being human. My worst is actively self-destructive." Still not running. He started the car. "Now, I'm taking you home. You're going to take a hot bath, put on comfortable clothes, and let me make you tea while we watch something mindless on TV. No arguing." "You're very bossy when you're being caring. I prefer assertively supportive." "That's not a thing. It is now. I just made it a thing." Her laugh was soft but real, and Lucas felt something loosen in his chest. They weren't out of the woods yet, but they'd turned a corner. Sometimes that was enough. The following weeks brought a gradual shift. Claire started seeing a therapist who specialized in caregiver burnout and complicated grief. Lucas adjusted his work schedule to be more flexible, leaning on Marcus to cover when he needed to be there for Claire or Noah. They fell into new rhythms, learning to navigate the complexity of blending their lives while managing the ongoing challenges each of them carried. Robert had good days and bad days. On the good ones, he recognized Claire and asked intelligent questions about her life. On the bad ones, he was lost in memories from decades past or angry at circumstances he couldn't understand. Claire learned to cherish the good moments without letting the bad ones destroy her. A skill Lucas knew from experience took time and practice to develop. Noah, for his part, seemed to thrive in the expanded family structure. He took to calling Claire by name without any awkwardness, accepted her presence at family dinners and school events with the easy adaptability of childhood. He asked questions about Robert's condition with the same straightforward curiosity he applied to everything, and Claire answered him honestly, treating him as someone capable of understanding difficult truths. It was during one of these family dinners at Lucas's house, about 2 months after Robert's placement, that the conversation took an unexpected turn. They'd just finished eating, Lucas's admittedly mediocre attempt at lasagna, and Noah was clearing plates with the responsible air of a child who'd been taught to contribute to household tasks. "Claire?" Noah paused in the doorway to the kitchen, a stack of plates in his hands. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, kiddo. What's up?" "Are you going to marry my dad?" Lucas nearly choked on his water. Claire's eyes went wide. Noah, oblivious to the bomb he just dropped, waited patiently for an answer. "Noah," Lucas started, "that's a pretty personal question." "It's okay." Claire cut him off gently, then turned her full attention to Noah. "That's a fair question. The honest answer is, I don't know yet. Your dad and I love each other, but marriage is a big decision. Why do you ask?" "Because Mia at school said her mom has a boyfriend, and they're not getting married, and Mia has to live in 2 houses, and it's confusing. I don't want to live in 2 houses. I like our house, but I also like having you around." Noah's expression was serious, working through a problem with the same focused intensity he brought to his schoolwork. So I was thinking maybe if you got married, you could just live here and we could all be together. That would be less confusing. Lucas felt his heart clench at the simple logic, the child's perspective that cut through adult complications to the heart of what mattered. He looked at Claire, trying to read her reaction, but her expression was carefully neutral. That makes sense, Claire said slowly, and I like being around too. But marriage is something your dad and I would need to talk about and decide together. It's not something we do just because it's less confusing, you know? It would have to be because we both really want to build a life together. Don't you want to? Noah's question was innocent, but it hung in the air with unexpected weight. Claire met Lucas's eyes across the table, and something passed between them. A question, maybe, or a recognition of possibility. I think, Claire said carefully, her gaze still locked with Lucas's, that's a conversation your dad and I need to have privately. But I appreciate you bringing it up, Noah. It's good to know how you feel about things. Okay, I'm going to put these in the sink now. Noah headed for the kitchen, apparently satisfied with this answer, leaving Lucas and Claire staring at each other in the sudden silence. Well, Lucas said finally, that was unexpected. Was it though? He's a smart kid. He sees how much time we spend together. It's a logical question. Claire's voice was measured, but Lucas could hear the tension underneath. Is it something you've thought about? Marriage? He asked it carefully, not wanting to pressure, but needing to know where her head was. Honestly, yes. But I didn't want to bring it up because I know it's complicated for you. You've been married before. You've lost a wife. The idea of doing it again might be... It's not that I don't want to, Lucas interrupted. It's that I want to be sure. I want to do it right, not just because it makes logistical sense or because Noah asked. If we do this, it needs to be because we're both all in, because we're choosing to build something permanent together. And are you? All in, I mean. Claire's voice was quiet, vulnerable. Lucas stood, moving around the table to her side. He took her hands, pulling her to her feet. Yeah, I am. I love you, Claire. I love the life we're building together. I love the way you are with Noah, the way you let me support you even when it's hard. I love that you push me to be better while accepting me exactly as I am. He paused. I'm not asking you to marry me right now, but I'm telling you that when I do ask, it won't be a question with any uncertainty behind it. It'll be because I can't imagine my life without you in it permanently. Claire's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. Good. Because I can't imagine my life without you either. You and Noah both. You've become home for me in a way I didn't think was possible. They kissed, soft and sweet, a promise of future conversations and decisions made together. From the kitchen came the sound of Noah humming to himself while he rinsed dishes, completely unaware that his simple question had pushed them toward a future they'd both been circling but not quite ready to name. That night, after Noah was asleep and Claire had gone home, Lucas found himself looking at the wooden box on his dresser where Sarah's ring rested. He opened it, taking out the band that had once symbolized forever. I think I'm going to ask her to marry me, he said softly to the photograph on his nightstand. I hope that's okay. I hope wherever you are, you understand that loving her doesn't mean I stopped loving you. It just means I learned to love differently, to love again. The photo offered no answer, but somehow Lucas felt peace. Sarah would have wanted this for him, for Noah. She'd have wanted them to build a full life, not one defined by her absence. He put the ring back in the box, but this time the gesture felt less like preservation of the past and more like acknowledgement that he was ready for a different future. The opportunity came 3 weeks later, though not in any way Lucas had planned. He'd been working on a major project for months, a community center that would serve a low-income neighborhood. The design had been challenging, balancing budget constraints with the need for a space that felt welcoming and dignified. After countless revisions, the city council was finally ready to vote on approval and funding. Lucas had invited Claire and Noah to the council meeting, wanting them to be part of this moment. They sat in the public gallery while he presented the final design, explaining how the center would provide childcare, job training, community gathering space, and health services all under one roof. The council members asked questions, debated costs and logistics, and finally voted. The project was approved unanimously, and the room broke into applause. Lucas felt the surge of accomplishment that came from work that mattered, from using his skills to create something that would genuinely improve lives. As they left the building, Noah bouncing with excitement about the cool building Dad designed, Claire linked her arm through Lucas's. "I'm proud of you," she said simply. "Not just for getting it approved, but for the way you talked about it. You made them see it wasn't just a building, but an investment in people's dignity. That's what it's supposed to be. Architecture isn't just about structures, it's about creating space for human flourishing." He smiled at her. "You get that. Most people don't." "I get you. That helps." They decided to celebrate with ice cream. A full circle returned to Scoops, where this had all begun. As they sat at the same table by the window, Noah working his way through a double scoop of mint chocolate chip, Lucas looked at Claire and felt certainty settle over him like a comfortable weight. This was his family. These were his people. The life they were building together wasn't perfect, wasn't without complications and challenges, but it was real, and it was theirs, and he wanted to make it official. "Claire?" He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I know we said we weren't going to rush anything, that we'd take our time and be sure." She looked at him with sudden alertness, reading something in his expression. "Okay? But I am sure. I've been sure for a while now. I just wasn't ready to admit it. I'm ready now." He squeezed her hand. "I don't have a ring yet, and this isn't exactly romantic, and I probably should have planned something better, but Lucas." She stopped him, her own eyes filling with tears. Will you marry me?" He said it simply, no flowery speech, just the essential question laid bare. "Will you build a life with us? With me and Noah? Will you let us be your family, officially and permanently?" Noah had gone very still, his ice cream forgotten, watching them with wide eyes. Claire was crying now, but smiling through the tears. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes. I can't think of anything I want more." Lucas stood, pulling her up with him, and kissed her while Noah let out a whoop of celebration that made everyone in the ice cream shop turn to look. They were probably making a scene, but Lucas couldn't bring himself to care. This was joy, pure and uncomplicated, the kind that demanded to be witnessed. "Does this mean Claire's going to live with us now?" Noah asked when they finally pulled apart. "Eventually, yeah. We'll have to figure out the logistics, but yes, we're going to be a family." Lucas ruffled his son's hair. "Is that okay with you?" "Are you kidding? That's awesome." Noah grinned. "Can I be in the wedding? Mia said her brother got to carry the rings when her aunt got married." "Of course you can be in the wedding. You're kind of essential to the whole thing." Claire crouched down to his level. "Is this really okay with you, Noah? I know it's a big change." "It's good change. The good weird kind, remember?" Noah's expression turned serious. "You make Dad happy. And you're nice to me but not fake nice. And you like mint chocolate chip. Those are all important things." Claire laughed, pulling him into a hug. "Those are very important things. Thank you for approving." They stayed at Scoops for another hour, making plans and dreaming out loud about the future. Noah had opinions about everything from what kind of cake they should have to whether Claire would keep her last name. Lucas and Claire let him talk, enjoying his enthusiasm while exchanging glances that carried their own private conversation. Later that evening, after Noah was asleep and Claire was about to head home, they stood on Lucas's front porch in the cool night air. "I know I said yes already," Claire said softly, "but I want you to know what that yes means. It means I'm choosing this. You, Noah, the complicated, beautiful mess of building a blended family. It means I trust you with my heart, even though that terrifies me. It means I believe you when you say you're not going anywhere." "I'm not," Lucas confirmed. "I'm staying, through all of it. The good days with your dad and the terrible ones. The moments when Noah tests boundaries because his world is changing. The times when grief sneaks up on both of us and we have to navigate it together. All of it." "I know. That's why I said yes." She kissed him softly. "We should probably tell people. My dad, your family. Make it real. It already feels pretty real to me. But yeah, we should tell people." Lucas pulled her closer. "Are you happy?" Terrified and happy and excited and scared, all of it at once. She smiled against his shoulder. "Is that normal?" "I think it's exactly right. If you weren't at least a little scared, I'd be worried you weren't taking it seriously." They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other and the magnitude of the commitment they'd just made. Above them, stars were barely visible through the city's light pollution, but Lucas looked up anyway, thinking about Sarah, about the journey that had brought him here, about the capacity of the human heart to love and lose and love again. "Thank you," he whispered, though he wasn't entirely sure who he was talking to. Sarah, maybe, for releasing him from guilt. Claire, for having the courage to say yes. Himself, for being brave enough to ask. The universe, perhaps, for the random traffic stop that had set all of this in motion. "For what?" Claire asked. "For being here, for saying yes, for being exactly who you are." He kissed the top of her head. "I know this won't always be easy, but I promise it'll always be worth it." "I'm holding you to that promise." "Good. Hold me to all of them." That's what marriage is, right? Holding each other accountable to the promises we make. Among other things, but yeah, that's a good start. She pulled back, looking up at him with eyes that held equal parts love and mischief. "So when should we actually do this? Get married, I mean." "I don't know. What feels right to you?" "Not too soon. I want time to plan something meaningful, not just rush through it, but not too long either. I don't want to spend years being engaged when we could just be married." She considered. 6 months? Is that crazy? 6 months sounds perfect. Enough time to do it right, but not so long that we're just postponing the inevitable. "Okay, 6 months then. We're really doing this. We're really doing this." Claire left shortly after, but the glow of the evening lingered long after her taillights disappeared down the street. Lucas checked on Noah one more time, finding him sprawled in his usual boneless sleep, the dragon book still on his nightstand and a smile on his face, even in dreams. "We're getting married, buddy," Lucas whispered. "Our family's getting bigger. I hope you're as ready for this as you think you are." In his own room, Lucas pulled out his phone and texted his mother. "Got a minute to talk? I have some news." Her response was immediate. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news? Really good news? I asked Claire to marry me. She said yes." The phone rang before he could type anything else. His mother's excited voice filled his ear, a stream of congratulations and questions and joy that made Lucas laugh. "Mom, slow down. Yes, we're really getting married. 6 months from now, probably. No, we haven't set an exact date yet. Yes, Noah's thrilled. Yes, I'm sure. Mom, I've never been more sure of anything." After he'd answered all her questions and promised to bring Claire over for a proper celebration, Lucas hung up and sat on the edge of his bed, looking at the photograph of Sarah that still held a place of honor on his nightstand. "I wish you could meet her," he said softly. "I think you'd like her. She's strong and kind, and she loves Noah like he's her own. She makes me want to be better. You'd approve, I think. At least, I hope you would." The photograph smiled back at him, frozen in a moment of happiness from a different life. Lucas picked it up, studying Sarah's face one more time, then gently placed it in the drawer of his nightstand. Not hiding it, not erasing it, but acknowledging that it belonged to his past rather than his present. On top of the nightstand in the photograph's place, he set his phone, which still displayed his last text exchange with Claire. "I love you. See you tomorrow. Love you too. Sweet dreams." It felt right. It felt like moving forward without forgetting where he'd been, like honoring the past while building the future, like exactly what Sarah would have wanted for him. Lucas turned off the light and lay in the darkness, his mind full of plans and possibilities. In 6 months, he'd marry Claire. They'd blend their lives officially, create a family out of grief and chance, and the choice to keep showing up for each other. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would be theirs. And somehow, impossibly, that felt like more than enough. It felt like everything. The 6 months between engagement and wedding should have been filled with nothing but joy and anticipation. Instead, they became a masterclass in navigating crisis while building towards something beautiful. It started small, as these things often do, with moments Lucas might have dismissed if he hadn't learned to pay attention to the details. Claire began canceling their lunch dates, citing unexpected shifts and departmental emergencies. She'd show up to family dinners with shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Her texts became shorter, less frequent, stripped of the warmth and humor that usually characterized their conversations. When Lucas asked if everything was okay, she'd smile and say she was fine, Just tired, just busy, just adjusting to everything. But Lucas had seen this pattern before, had watched her retreat into herself when the weight became too much. He recognized the signs of someone drowning and trying desperately to hide it. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening 2 months before the wedding. Lucas had taken Noah to visit Robert at the memory care facility, something they'd started doing weekly to maintain connection. Claire was supposed to meet them there after her shift, but she'd texted at the last minute saying she couldn't make it, offering no explanation. Robert was having a bad day, confused and agitated, asking repeatedly for his daughter. Lucas did his best to comfort him while Noah sat quietly nearby, holding Robert's hand with the patient gentleness he'd learned from watching his father care for Sarah. "Where's Claire?" Robert asked for the 5th time. "She should be here. She always comes." "She had to work today, but she'll visit tomorrow," Lucas said gently, though he wasn't sure that was true anymore. "She's a good girl. Takes care of everyone but herself." Robert's moment of clarity was sharp, painful. "You tell her she needs to stop carrying the world. Tell her I said so." "I will. I promise." After they left the facility, with Noah buckled into the back seat and the evening stretching ahead, Lucas made a decision. Instead of going home, he drove to Claire's house. Her car was in the driveway, lights on inside, but when he knocked, there was no answer. "Dad?" Noah's voice was uncertain from where Lucas had told him to wait by the car. "Is Claire okay?" "I don't know, buddy, but I'm going to find out." Lucas pulled out his phone, calling Claire. He could hear it ringing inside the house, but she didn't answer. He tried the door, locked. Went around to the back, also locked. Finally, he used the emergency key she'd given him months ago, the one he'd promised only to use if absolutely necessary. He found her in her father's old study, sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes of Robert's things she'd been meaning to sort for months. Photos and police commendations and random objects that held meaning only to the man who was slowly forgetting they'd ever mattered. She wasn't crying, which somehow made it worse. She just sat there, blank-eyed and hollow, holding a photograph of Robert in his dress uniform on the day he'd made sergeant. "Claire." Lucas knelt beside her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "Hey, talk to me." "I can't do this." Her voice was flat, emotionless. "I can't marry you. I can't blend our lives. I can't pretend I'm okay when I'm falling apart. I can't ask you and Noah to tie yourselves to someone who's this broken." Lucas felt his heart drop, but he kept his voice steady. "You're not broken. You're overwhelmed. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it feels pretty much the same." She finally looked at him, and the emptiness in her eyes was devastating. "I went to see my dad today before my shift. He didn't know me, Lucas. He looked right at me and asked the nurse to find his daughter. I spent 20 minutes trying to convince my own father that I was Claire, and he just got more and more agitated because I was upsetting him by insisting I was someone he couldn't remember. I'm so sorry. That must have been..." And then I went to work and responded to a domestic violence call and watched a woman make excuses for her husband who'd put her in the hospital. Again. And all I could think was that at least she had someone who remembered her name, even if he was hurting her. How messed up is that? Claire's laugh was bitter, broken. I'm comparing my situation to an abuse victim and thinking she has it better because at least her partner knows who she is. Lucas pulled her into his arms, feeling her rigid resistance before she finally collapsed against him. "You're not thinking clearly right now. You're exhausted and grief-stricken, and you've been trying to hold it together for too long. So what? So I fall apart, and you pick up the pieces, and then what? I do it again in 6 months? A year? This is who I am now, Lucas. Someone whose father is disappearing, whose job exposes her to the worst of humanity, who apparently can't handle the stress of planning a wedding on top of everything else. You and Noah deserve better than this mess. We deserve you. All of you, including the messy parts." He pulled back to look at her face. "But you're right about one thing. You can't keep doing this alone. You can't work full-time, visit your dad every day, plan a wedding, be present in a relationship, and still have anything left for yourself. Something has to give. I can't give up my job. I can't stop visiting my dad. I can't..." "I'm not asking you to give up anything. I'm asking you to let people help. Let me help. Let your therapist help. Let the staff at the facility help. You don't have to do everything yourself to prove you're not your mother. The comparison hit its mark. Claire flinched, fresh tears spilling over. How did you? Because I know you. I know you've been terrified of abandoning anyone the way you were abandoned. But there's a difference between setting healthy boundaries and running away. Your mother left because she didn't want to deal with hard things. You're drowning because you're trying to deal with everything at once. Those aren't the same thing. Then what do I do? How do I fix this? Lucas took a breath, knowing what he was about to suggest might not be well received, but needing to say it anyway. First, you take some time off work. Use sick leave, vacation days, whatever you need. You're no good to anyone if you're running on empty. Second, we scale back the wedding plans. Keep it simple, small, just the people who matter most. Third, you visit your dad when you can, not every single day. The staff can call if there's an emergency, but you need to trust that he's being cared for even when you're not there. That feels like giving up on everything. It's not giving up. It's prioritizing. It's choosing to survive instead of burning out. He cupped her face in his hands. And fourth, most important, you let me in. You stop trying to protect me from the hard parts. You tell me when you're struggling instead of pulling away. You let Noah and me be your family, which means letting us support you when you need it. What if it's too much? What if you realize you don't want to deal with all of this? Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm not going anywhere, Claire. I've told you that 100 times, and I'll tell you 100 more if that's what it takes for you to believe it. His voice was firm, certain. I love you. Not the version of you that has everything together. The real you, who's struggling and scared and trying so hard to be strong that you've forgotten it's okay to be weak sometimes. She searched his face for doubt, for reservation, for any sign that he was saying what she wanted to hear rather than what he meant. Whatever she found there seemed to satisfy her because she finally let herself break. The tears came hard and fast. 3 months of suppressed grief and fear and exhaustion pouring out in racking sobs that shook her whole body. Lucas held her through it, one hand stroking her hair while the other held her steady. From somewhere outside he could hear Noah's voice, probably talking to himself while he waited in the car. He should check on him, but he couldn't leave Claire like this, couldn't abandon her in her moment of greatest need. As if reading his mind, Claire pulled back slightly. Noah, you left him in the car. He must be worried. He'll be okay for a few more minutes. You're more important right now. No, go get him. Bring him in. I don't want him scared, and I don't want to hide this from him. If we're going to be a family, he should see that adults struggle too, that it's okay to ask for help. Lucas kissed her forehead, then went to get Noah. He found his son sitting in the car, patient but concerned, his small face pressed against the window. Is Claire okay? Noah asked immediately. She's having a really hard day. She's sad and overwhelmed and needed someone to help her. Come on, let's go inside. They found Claire in the bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. She looked up when they entered, her eyes red and swollen but clearer than they'd been. Hey, Noah. Her voice was rough but genuine. I'm sorry you had to wait. I'm having kind of a tough time right now. That's okay. Dad says it's okay to have tough times. Noah moved closer, his expression serious. Do you need a hug? Hugs help when I'm having tough times. Claire's smile was watery but real. Yeah, kiddo, I think a hug would help a lot. Noah wrapped his arms around her waist, and Claire held him like he was an anchor, keeping her tethered to something solid. Lucas watched them, these two people he loved more than anything, supporting each other with the simple honesty children brought to emotional moments. Are you still going to marry my dad? Noah asked, his voice muffled against Claire's shirt. Yeah, I am. I just got scared for a little while. But your dad reminded me that being scared is okay, as long as you don't run away. That's good. I was worried you might run away like my mom did. Noah's statement was matter of fact, but Lucas felt his breath catch. They'd never talked about Sarah leaving in those terms, had always framed her death as something that happened to her rather than something she chose. Your mom didn't run away, buddy, Lucas said gently. She got sick and died. That's different. I know, but she still left us, even if she didn't want to. And sometimes I get scared that people I love will leave again. Noah looked up at Claire. You're not going to leave, right? Even when things are hard? No, sweetheart. I'm not going to leave. I promise. Claire's voice was thick with emotion. Sometimes I might have bad days like today, where I get sad or overwhelmed. But that doesn't mean I'm going anywhere. It just means I need extra help and support from the people I love. Like how Dad needed extra help when I was really sick? Exactly like that. Okay, that makes sense. Noah seemed satisfied with this explanation. Can we have dinner now? I'm really hungry. The practical request broke the tension, making both adults laugh. They ordered pizza and ate it sitting on Claire's living room floor, surrounded by the boxes she'd been sorting. Afterward, Noah helped pack the photos back up, handling them with careful reverence, while Lucas and Claire made plans. Claire would take 2 weeks off work, something she'd never done in her entire career. They'd postpone the wedding by a month to take pressure off the planning. She'd commit to her therapy appointments and to being honest when she was struggling. And she'd move in with Lucas and Noah sooner rather than later, so she wouldn't be alone in her house with her father's things and her spiraling thoughts. Are you sure? She asked when Lucas suggested the early move. That's a big step, and you didn't sign up for a roommate who comes with this much baggage. I signed up for you, all of you. The baggage is part of the package. He squeezed her hand. Besides, Noah and I rattle around in that house. We could use someone to fill up the space. I take up a lot of space. Emotionally, I mean, I'm kind of a lot right now. Good. I like a lot. A lot is never boring. She laughed, and it sounded almost like her real laugh, the one he'd fallen in love with. You're ridiculous. You're just figuring that out now? I thought you were supposed to be a trained observer. Shut up and kiss me. He did, thoroughly, while Noah made exaggerated gagging sounds from across the room. The next 2 weeks were a study in intentional rest and recovery. Claire slept late, took long walks, attended therapy sessions where she finally unpacked the trauma of watching her father disappear. Lucas worked from home when he could, keeping her company while respecting her need for space. Noah treated Claire's presence in their home as the most natural thing in the world, recruiting her to help with homework and play video games and judge which of his drawings was the best. They visited Robert together, but only twice during those 2 weeks, and Claire was surprised to find that the world didn't end when she skipped days. The staff sent updates via text, letting her know he was eating well, participating in activities, and having more good days than bad. The distance gave her perspective, allowed her to see that her constant presence hadn't been preventing his decline, had only been exhausting her while he progressed on his own timeline regardless. On one of the good days, they brought Robert to the house for dinner. It was a risk, taking him out of his familiar environment, but Lucas had insisted it was important for him to be part of their family moments when possible. Robert was confused at first, uncertain about the strange house and the small boy who kept trying to show him Lego creations. But then something clicked, and he looked at Claire with clear recognition. "You're getting married," he said, as if remembering a conversation they'd had recently. "To the architect, the good man." "Yes, Dad, I am." Claire's voice was thick with emotion. "Good. You deserve someone good, someone who stays." Robert's hand shook slightly as he reached for hers. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart. Your mother would be too, if she were here." It was the first time he'd mentioned Claire's mother in years, the first acknowledgement that she'd existed beyond the leaving. Claire's tears came fast, but they were clean tears, healing tears, the kind that released rather than imprisoned. "Thank you, Dad. That means everything." The moment of clarity didn't last long. Within minutes, Robert was confused again, asking where they were and why. But the gift of those words sustained Claire through the harder days that followed. The wedding planning, scaled back from their original ambitions, became a shared project that brought joy rather than stress. They decided on Lucas's backyard, transformed by simple decorations and the autumn colors that October would bring. Just family and close friends, maybe 30 people total. Noah would carry the rings, walking alongside Lucas's mother, who'd offered to play grandmother of the groom, despite technically being grandmother of neither party. "Can I write something to say at the wedding?" Noah asked one evening while they were addressing invitations. "Like a speech?" "You want to make a speech?" Lucas was surprised. Noah had inherited his father's preference for private emotion over public displays. "Not a big one. Just something about how we're a family now. Is that weird?" "That's not weird at all, buddy. That's actually really beautiful." Claire reached over to ruffle his hair. "We'd be honored if you wanted to say something. Okay, I'm going to work on it. It'll be good. You'll see. He disappeared into his room with the serious determination of a child on a mission. Lucas and Claire exchanged glances, both of them blinking back unexpected tears. He's something special, Claire said softly. He is. We both are pretty lucky to have him. Lucas pulled her closer. And he's lucky to have you. We both are. I'm the lucky one. A few months ago, I was convinced I'd spend the rest of my life alone, taking care of my dad and working too much, and never letting anyone close enough to matter. Then you ran a red light and everything changed. Best traffic violation I ever committed. Technically, you should still have gotten a ticket for that. You want to write me one now? Would that make you feel better? She laughed, swatting his arm. You're impossible. And yet you're marrying me anyway. Clearly I have terrible judgment. The worst, it's one of the things I love about you. The weeks passed in a blur of preparation and normal life resuming its rhythm. Claire returned to work, but with better boundaries in place. She worked her scheduled shifts and went home, leaving the extra overtime for officers who needed it more. She visited her father 3 times a week instead of every day, and slowly released the guilt that had been eating her alive. Lucas watched her heal, watched her learn to accept help, watched her become more herself than she'd been since he met her. The shadows under her eyes faded. Her laugh came more easily. She started planning for a future that included more than just survival. They had rough days still. Robert had a medical scare that landed him in the hospital briefly. Lucas's biggest project faced unexpected delays that threatened both timeline and budget. Noah went through a phase of testing boundaries as the wedding approached and his world shifted. But they faced these challenges together, as a unit, supporting each other through the hard moments instead of retreating into isolation. The night before the wedding, tradition demanded they sleep separately. Claire went to stay with her friend from the force while Lucas and Noah had a guys' night at home. They ordered Chinese food and watched a movie, but Lucas could tell Noah was working up to something important. Dad? Noah asked during a commercial break. Can I ask you something serious? Of course, buddy. Always. Do you think Mom would be mad about you marrying Claire? Lucas felt his chest tighten. They'd talked about this before, but he understood Noah needed reassurance, especially on the eve of such a significant change. No, I don't think she'd be mad. I think she'd be happy we found someone who loves us and takes good care of us. He pulled Noah closer on the couch. Your mom loved us more than anything. And when you really love someone, you want them to be happy even after you're gone. She'd want us to have a full life, not a half life where we're always sad and alone. I'm not sad anymore. Not like I used to be. Noah's voice was thoughtful. I still miss her sometimes, and I still think about her, but it doesn't hurt as much as it used to. Is that bad? That's not bad at all. That's healing. It means you're carrying her memory without letting it crush you. That's exactly what she would have wanted. I think I'm going to tell Claire that tomorrow, in my speech, that Mom would be happy we found her. Lucas had to swallow hard against the lump in his throat. I think that would be really beautiful, Noah. Really beautiful. They finished the movie and went to bed, but Lucas lay awake for a long time, thinking about the journey that had brought them here. From the desperate traffic stop to this moment, from grief and isolation to the brink of new beginning. It hadn't been easy, and it hadn't been straightforward, but every difficult step had been worth it. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Can't sleep, too excited. Also slightly terrified. Is that normal? He smiled, typing back, completely normal. I'm excited and terrified too, but mostly excited. I love you. I can't wait to marry you tomorrow. I love you too. Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow. You too. Sweet dreams. Lucas set the phone aside and closed his eyes, already dreaming of the life they were about to officially begin. The wedding day arrived with perfect October weather, crisp and sunny, the kind of day that felt designed for new beginnings. Lucas's backyard had been transformed by his mother and Claire's friends from the department, simple but beautiful with white chairs and an arch covered in autumn flowers. The guest list was small, intimate, just the people who'd supported them through everything. Lucas stood under the arch with Noah beside him, both of them in suits that made his son look impossibly grown up. The small gathering of friends and family settled into their seats. Music started. Nothing fancy, just a playlist they'd carefully curated, and Claire appeared at the back of the yard. She wasn't wearing a traditional wedding dress. Instead, she'd chosen a simple dress in deep blue that made her eyes luminous, her hair down in soft waves, carrying a small bouquet of wildflowers. She walked alone, no one giving her away because she was giving herself, choosing this moment and this commitment with full agency and clear eyes. Lucas felt his breath catch as she approached. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was here, present and choosing him and Noah, building something real out of the broken pieces they'd each been carrying. The ceremony was short, personal. They'd written their own vows, promises that acknowledged their pasts while committing to their future. When Lucas spoke, his voice was steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. Claire, you taught me that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting where I've been. You showed me that love isn't a finite resource, that choosing to love again doesn't diminish what I felt before. You've been patient with my grief, generous with my son, and brave enough to let me support you when you needed it. I promise to keep showing up, especially when it's hard. I promise to choose you every day, in big ways and small. I promise to build a life with you that honors both of our journeys while creating something entirely new. Claire's tears were already falling, but her smile was radiant. When it was her turn, her voice was strong and clear. Lucas, you found me when I didn't even know I was looking. You saw past my walls and my fear and my conviction that I had to carry everything alone. You taught me that asking for help isn't weakness, that letting people in is the bravest thing I can do. You've given me a family when I thought I'd lost mine, shown me that home isn't a place, but the people you choose to build life with. I promise to keep choosing you, to keep being honest even when it's hard, to love Noah like he's my own because he is my own. I promise to stay through all of it because you're worth staying for. The officiant pronounced them married, and Lucas kissed his wife while their small gathering erupted in applause. Noah, who'd been standing patiently to the side, cleared his throat importantly. Can I do my speech now? He asked, and everyone laughed at his perfect timing. Go ahead, buddy. Lucas kept one arm around Claire as Noah pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. I wrote this because I wanted to explain something important. Noah's voice was surprisingly steady for an 8-year-old addressing 30 people. 3 years ago, my mom died, and it was really sad. Dad and I were sad for a long time. But Dad told me that Mom would want us to be happy again, not stay sad forever. And I think he was right, because when Claire came into our lives, everything started getting better. Not because she replaced Mom, nobody could do that, but because she showed us we could have a new family without forgetting the old one. He paused, looking up at Claire. You make my dad smile more. You help me with my homework even when it's boring math. You never try to be my mom, but you love me like family anyway. And I think my mom would really like you. I think she'd be happy we found you. So thank you for choosing us. Thank you for staying even when things got hard. Thank you for being exactly who you are. By the time Noah finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the gathering. Claire crouched down to his level, pulling him into a tight hug. Thank you, sweetheart. That was perfect. You're perfect. She pulled back, framing his face with her hands. I promise I'll always stay. You're stuck with me now. Good. I'd be really mad if you left after Dad already bought you a ring. The laughter that followed was exactly what they needed, breaking the emotional tension while preserving the beauty of the moment. The reception was equally simple. Good food, better company, toasts that ranged from funny to touching. Robert had a good day and sat in a place of honor, occasionally forgetting where he was, but seeming content in the happiness surrounding him. As the afternoon wore into evening, Lucas found himself standing with Claire at the edge of the gathering, watching Noah play with 2 of his cousins who'd made the trip for the wedding. We did it, Claire said softly. We're actually married. We are. How does it feel? Terrifying, wonderful, right? She leaned into him, like coming home after being lost for a really long time. I know exactly what you mean. He kissed the top of her head. Thank you. For what? For saying yes, for staying, for being brave enough to build this with me. Thank you for asking, for not giving up on me when I tried to push you away, for showing me what it looks like when someone actually keeps their promises. They stood together in the fading autumn light, surrounded by people they loved, watching their son play with the uncomplicated joy of childhood. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Their lives would continue to be complicated, challenging, filled with the messy reality of blended families and ongoing grief and all the unpredictable chaos of being human. But it was real. It was theirs. And it was exactly what they both needed. Noah ran up to them, breathless and happy. "Dad, Claire, they're getting ready to cut the cake. You have to come." "Lead the way, kiddo." Lucas took Claire's hand with one of his, Noah's with the other, and together they walked back to join their celebration. Later that night, after the guests had left and the decorations had been taken down, after Noah had fallen asleep exhausted from excitement and Claire had changed out of her dress into comfortable clothes, they sat together on their back porch. The October air was cool but not cold, perfect for the blanket they shared. "I can't believe we're married," Claire said, looking at the simple gold band on her finger. "This morning I was Claire Morgan. Now I'm Claire Hale. Or Claire Morgan Hale. Or still Claire Morgan. However you want to do it. I think I want to be Claire Hale. Fresh start. New beginning. All of it." She smiled at him. "Is that okay? More than okay? It's perfect." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when you're completely at ease with another person. Inside, Noah was dreaming peacefully in a house that now belonged to all three of them. Robert was safe in his facility, cared for by professionals who could give him what Claire alone couldn't. The community center Lucas had designed was breaking ground next month. Claire's therapy was helping her build better boundaries and healthier coping mechanisms. None of it was perfect. Robert would continue to decline. Hard days would come. Challenges would arise. But they'd face them together, as a family, with the kind of commitment that was forged in crisis and tempered by choice. "Lucas?" Claire's voice was soft in the darkness. "Yeah?" "I'm really glad you ran that red light." He laughed, the sound warm and genuine. "Me too. Best mistake I ever made." "Not a mistake. Fate. Destiny. The universe knowing what we needed before we did." "You getting poetic on me?" "Maybe. It's my wedding day. I'm allowed to be poetic." "Fair point." He pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her shampoo and the lingering perfume she'd worn for the ceremony. "I love you, Claire Hale. I love you too, Lucas Hale. And Noah Hale. And this life we're building together." "To new beginnings. To choosing to stay. To family." They stayed there until the night grew too cold to ignore, until Claire started yawning and Lucas realized he was exhausted in the best possible way. They locked up the house together, checked on Noah one last time, and went to bed in a room that now belonged to both of them. As Lucas drifted off to sleep, Claire's warmth beside him and the sound of his son's breathing down the hall, he thought about the journey that had brought him here. From the darkest days of Sarah's illness to the lonely years that followed, from the desperate traffic stop to this moment of complete peace. It had been a long road, full of pain and loss, and learning to live again. But he'd made it. They'd all made it. And the life stretching ahead of them, with all its unknown challenges and promised joys, was worth every difficult step it had taken to get here. In the darkness, Lucas reached for Claire's hand, lacing his fingers through hers. She squeezed back, even in sleep, and he felt something settle deep in his chest. Not the absence of grief, that would always be part of him, but the presence of something new. Hope. Joy. The certainty that love, when you're brave enough to risk it again, is always worth the leap. Tomorrow they'd wake up as a married couple. They'd figure out the logistics of shared closets and combined finances and all the mundane details of building a life together. They'd visit Robert and work their jobs and help Noah with his homework. They'd face whatever challenges came their way with the same commitment they'd brought to this moment. But tonight, they could simply rest in the knowledge that they'd chosen each other, fully and completely, and that choice had made all the difference. Outside, the October wind whispered through the trees. Inside, a family slept peacefully, bound not just by ceremony and legal documents, but by the deeper ties of showing up, staying present, and choosing love even when it was terrifying. It was more than enough. It was everything. And it was just the beginning.